spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, as we remember our dear brother Malcolm X on the anniversary of his assassination, we also want to welcome you and present our National Grand Sheikh, Tarik Bey.
Tonight's subject, Nunc pro Tunc, and we're going to go into some different areas. As a matter of fact, I apologize, I was looking for the file. I was looking for it earlier, and I brought my big gig looking for it right now because I wanted you to print it at all. Now, but since we started, I want to bring that into your consciousness. As the hybrid Europeans who've been occupying North America, operatives through their gangs of New York, fraternal order that they refer to as the police in Philadelphia, being commercial mercenaries, carried out a mission to assassinate persons, natural beings, who were known as Move, because they would not submit their children to the Roman order of Constantine under the General Education Board set up by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates in 1902, which was designed for docility training for animals, etc. And basically, one of the mother's sons who basically led part of the liberation and the self-determination operations was known as John Africa. So the Europeans, the hybrid Europeans, who were carrying out the mission to murder some of them, to intimidate them, and to intimidate others to deliver their children to the Roman order through the John D. Rockefeller school systems, etc., disguised the planned genocide and assassination as people who were out of order, when in fact that the people were protecting their children and their offspring from Roman operations. Many of you know about the bombing that took place in Philadelphia on Osage Avenue, the assassination of MOVE members, etc. The concepts that many people have concerning that matter logically has been groomed by the hybrid Europeans who have been misrepresenting them. One of the things that I want to bring to your attention is not so much arguing that, because in the future we might go into details with that matter, because most of you are familiar with it, those assassinations, including them doing, because they'll do duality in their sacrificial forms. Because most of what they do is take some of the negative magic sacrifices that were made with the ancient Asiatic culture of Babylonia, and of course they always used the dark magic, and so they would always systematically do ritualistic sacrifices. At that time, they just chose MOVE, John Africa, etc. as the target. But shortly after that, because one of the things that they always do is that they try to balance things out. And what they issued shortly after that, genocide activity, they issued what is known as the Nunc pro Tunc proclamation, coming from the City Hall chambers of Philadelphia. I was looking for the direct document, which I'll present to you in the near future. I couldn't find that particular file, but I recognize I have it actually on one of my other older computers. And this was a declaration of them putting to the public for all these people called Negroes, blacks, colored, niggers, etc., to declare their nationality free, that they're Moors, etc. And many of you over the years have been familiar with that documentation. But the Nunc pro Tunc actually deals on multiple levels, which is a law term that implies now for them. That's what Nunc pro Tunc means. But the Nunc pro Tunc principle is actually in relationship to the people of the North, can be looked at from the Sundry Free Moors Act as an example. Tamara, the Sundry Free Moors Act can be looked at even as it's being presented today in these days. The William Dungy case, the Dred Scott case, all of these in reference, when you study them from a position of legal status and lawful status, are non-pro-tunc positions. For those who are studying those as a law and historical documentations, in this day and time. So I wanted to share with you a few things, and as a matter of fact, I want to give you something in a minute, because you was bringing it up earlier about the issues, the jurisdictional issues. And you can copy this, and these actually are old roundtable lessons, and you've seen some of them in some of the book forms that were printed out, etc. Some of the things that that we have done here, but we're going to do more often at the House of Reawakening Minds, so that people can walk with some of this information rather than just hearing us speak of it. And particularly in the matters of jurisdiction. Now, even the conversation, for those who are listening, some of you are not aware, we were having a conversation before we came on air, and the sister was talking about the developments of her consciousness, and the different conflicts that you may have with family members are evolving, etc. And upon a test, most of them don't even have a background in what they themselves claim. And this is back to even when we did the last class, Tamara, on the Sabbath, and I was going over the multiple levels of the reality of how to look at it, not from the concepts that people have of thinking that they're giving honor to the seventh day, which is what they're trained to do, but that's not really what that really means. Not that that's not inclusive in the meanings, it is emphasized, but that was not the point. The point of it is have you preserved the traditions and the cultures of your forefathers that are the foundation of culture on the earth planet. That's what the Sabbath really is, and what it really means is, have you been keeping the principles of the Sabians, your forefathers? That's really what it means. So people get caught in the rituals of celebrating the seventh day, say, well, God created the world, and then he rested, and so that on the seventh day he rested, and so people give honor to the seventh day, which is logically Saturday, or Saturn. So then you must understand the cosmological nature of Saturn and the relationship of the what is called the Hermetic rule, or Taut, or Tahuti, the rule of cause and effect, or cashing the check, as you say, or reciprocity, etc. And that's really what it really means. It's the Hermetic law. So people not being told the culture think that it means that you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath physically, and that to give honor to the Creator, that you rest because the Creator rested. And then you get people arguing which day it is, which also means what degree it is, because day actually means degree, you see. We get in most of their minds, most of them are never thinking the planet Saturn, or even the cosmological nature. And so what happens is people start arguing about concepts about beliefs that are promoted in the names of these traditions and customs that are evolved from the cosmological representations and the symbolisms representing the cosmological nature of civilization on the planet. And of course, out of that, then you have what they call secularisms. And this is back to what we were talking about earlier when I was saying to you, where people do not understand that Christianity is ours, but they haven't been given Christianity. The church is ours. They have not been taken to church. Do you understand? So if someone's talking to you, say they tell you what Sulam and Shield or Hex Alpha really means, then you have to get into the culture and the science, and you wouldn't be sitting around arguing about Solomon's seal, giving psychological honor to a man that you think that this really represents, if you get the point. Or where some people who really don't know the culture would say the Jewish star, which Jew is contemporary, and the dynamics around it is fictitious. But symbolically, Jews simply means those who have the jewel or the knowledge, and that's contemporary. But it's not a belief system, well clear. And then you have people claim to be Jews that are not Jews. What they're really claiming to be is Sabian, because the culture of their conquest was to conquer you, steal your identity, and steal your culture and your resources. That's what the real Jew is when they say the real Jew. The real Jew is a Sabian. But then Jew is a corruption of a dynamics of operations and not so much a people. But Sabian is the people, or what you call Saba is the people, and what they've been doing is murdering you and claiming your estate. So when they tell you the story about, like say John 8:44 in the Septuaginta in the Bible, it says, how say thee that you are Abraham's children, as if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham, but you seek to kill me, a man who's telling you the truth. And so people look at it from the perspective of the demons or the devil, or someone claiming to be a Jew, and so therefore there must be a real Jew, when actually that's a corruption of them not wanting to say Sabians. Do you understand? Are we clear? Which means that you're claiming to be the culture and the people who you are not. For you are here to steal from them, and you are murderers, and you are not them. What you've been doing is identity theft. Now, what I'm telling you is what that really means, but they don't teach you that way. They teach you like it's a belief system, and and so here's these guys saying they're Jews, and then Yeshua or Isa, or renamed as Jesus, who's a real Jew, telling them they're not his children type thing. You get the point? That's how it's viewed, how the story is told. But in the real culture, what they're really talking about is invading people, claiming to be Sabians, and have been altering history, robbing lands, murdering the people, and then claiming the identity of the people, when in truth, they are totally contrary to both the culture and everything else in honor or with integrity. As a matter of fact, what they've been doing is actually destroying nature and anything that relates to nature, and that has been their nature. And so therefore, Yeshua or Jesus say, get behind me, or get away from me, Satan. You are your father, the devil. He is a murderer from the beginning. He abides not in the truth. And when he speaks of a lie, he speaks of his own kind, which is also an indicator that these are outside hybrids. See, but they're not going to tell you also that history. You see the whole point? So what you have, the problem in humanity, with some of the unspoken history, is that you have a hybrid alien species among us that have been imitating humanity when actually they're the enemies of humanity. Are we clear? Now you got to identify who the humans really are. And the ones who really ain't. And so you're getting into the real dynamics of the human condition on the planet. Also, how and why they've contaminated the cosmological nature of true religion and given them the masses dogma and called it religion, has created all this confusion on the planet that has evolved for these last few centuries, that have been controlled by some people who claim to be Abrahamic, and that's in all the crew, all across the board, without explaining to people as a glandular system. It's number one, activation of the glandular systems, activation of the chakras, or the energy centers of the being, the 7 major energy centers of the being. And of course, there's other energy centers, actually hundreds of them. And when you get into the real science of life, you get deeper into that even. So rather than tell the people the truth of what this is all about, they keep this stuff surface and start talking about the different eras of time and the different epochs of operations on the planet, and then give them names and then call those names prophets. And then the prophets are presented to the people anthropomorphically as actual men that have lived and came to brought messages when, for the most part, they're talking about epochs of time. They're also talking collective cultural adjustments and modifications of morphings of Sabian culture. Truthfully, that's really what it is. And of course, it makes people uncomfortable, because then they would have to go into all the elemental forms, and then they'd have to go back beyond the competing rulers, which would include Amen, Ra. You know, this is why all the prayers are ended with Amen, but they won't say Amen, Ra. See, because Ra, Amen, Ra, is also one of the competing advanced beings who were competing with other advanced beings who were communicating with us on this planet, who saw opportunities to kind of take over. And yet the different names that were taken by these others is considered in the modern day, because remember, when you go amongst the ancient culture, what the people are calling today God is plural. And it has to do with elements. So to hide the history, you have to hide the God systems. And then make it monotheistic, or make it one, and whoever controls that one controls humanity. That's what's been going on. Get over it, you've been had. You know, and I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. You know, it really is. However, that is the truth. You know, this is why, like, say, for instance, if someone present to you, as an example, now for them, Nunc pro Tunc. Look at the Septuaginta, look at the Bible, and it says in the genetics, in the genetic operations, it says, let us. Is us singular or plural? Plural. Let's repeat so everybody can hear. Is us singular or plural? Plural. It says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. What was happening? You were being modified. There's interrupting with your gene pool. Now, the same people that are presented this story are then right after told that God is singular. Now, linguistic, and this is back to what Tarik was talking about earlier, with people's difficulty dealing with morphology and linguistic form, not understanding original meanings, etc. Elo is singular for the planetary forms in this, particularly in this solar system. They're called Elo. Collectively, they were called Elohim. But it also have multiple layered meanings. When you study or understand Asiatic African culture, you will understand that there's multiple layered meanings. And there's always what's called masculine, feminine form in both the language, even in the naming of cities or things that are built. Now, when they do transliterations, because of the conquest cultivation, they give it a masculine form in order to hide the feminine culture, and also to write the female or the mother or the life gate out of history so that the priesthood of Rome can rule. This is a known factor, but it is not taken into account when people study those books, are we clear? So people will look at the, say, Septuaginta or the Bible or WASPI or any of the books, and they'll look at the God form, and it will always automatically be presented with a masculine format. Are we clear? Which is a political motive, not the truth. It does not mean that people aren't necessarily moral or ethical themselves, but that is not the truth. Are we clear? Then when you look also, when you study Asiatic African culture, now and then, now it is muddied, but the plurality or the Elohim, which means mother, father. Anyone that knows linguistics, do some research. That's what Elohim means. So Elohim means mother, father, and yet it is told to the people who are taught this that that is the name of God, singular man, when the word means mother, father. Also, the word itself is plural. The singular is Elah. So Elah is singular, but now you're talking about planets. See, so now if they tell the people the truth, now they got to teach them the cosmological background, and then they got to teach them the truth of how all of the major holidays around the planet, no matter what so-called religion they're claiming, are all made fundamentally by the moon calendar. Are we clear? And a knowledge of the moon calendar, rooted in the culture. Everything they do is rooted around the moon. Now, it's never discussed, is it?
Yep.
Is it? Because now you got to go back to the elements, or what you call the non-monotheistic presentment of the God format. And this is, again, where you get, for the priesthood, the business of selling gods. And the gods are always costly. They always cost you, they're always broke. Let's cut through the chase. They're always broke. Yes. Meanwhile, they're bringing you things. But it's always a promise. So you're always paying for them, and their so-called service to you as gods are always one of these days in the Lord's time. And of course, generation passes, but hope and faith, the fiat is supposed to stay in you. You have the faith in it, the fiat in you. Now, so the point that I'm making, and it's not a condemnation of people who have been duped by this, is for them to recognize that they have been duped. What they do with the knowledge, that's on them to evolve and to grow up. And go back to the principles of their mothers and fathers. So you'll see one of the things that the priesthood has always done, because they understand divine law, is that they closed, say, the Torah, or they closed the Tunc, etc., with, or what they call the Old Testament, or they'll call it Malachi. And then they'll say, the Son of Righteousness arises with healing in his wings. And it says, turn your hearts back to your mothers and fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. What it really means is telling you, go back to the Sabian culture, or the earth is cursed. Which means you yourself have control of the culture on the earth, and you are responsible to this. It says, the Son of Righteousness, and then it says, spells S-U-N, that's not accidental. And the reason it's there, it is for those who really understand divine law, understand that divine law and ens legis operations or legislative or civil law are two different aspects. Whereas legislative, or what is called ens legis, civilization operations, is evolved from the magi, which they were called magistrate. They're magicians. Those who know the magic or the herbs, the earth, etc., who have taken advantage of an illiterate masses who they themselves promoted that illiteracy and have actually been sucking off of them like vampires, and then promoting the idol god systems, because you have multiple layers by which that can be done, etc. They'll acknowledge the non-monotheistic or theistic platforms that already existed on the planets, and then give them personalities and pretend that they were rescuing the people from all these idol gods, when most of these different so-called gods were simply names given to elements, forces, powers, and epos. As an example, gods of thunder, gods of lightning, gods of rain, gods of springtime, and gods really meaning that forces and powers, or even the waters of the womb, the waters of the earth. And this is where you get the rituals of libation. It's an action, or more like a verb transitive, not a being. Now, of course, if the people were really taught the truth about religion, and they started studying nature and harmonizing with nature, they wouldn't need the priesthood. Furthermore, they wouldn't need all these gods and masters, most of which are really artificial, made up by men. Go ahead. And give her the mic. Give her the mic.
So,
you got to be on the mic. Yes.
So most of the gods are actually energies within us.
Say it again.
Most gods are energies within us.
When you see in the say Quran, Waspi, the Vedas, Bible, Septuaginta, the different formats where it makes refer to idol gods, it is where it's really talking about anthropomorphism without explaining anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism is where for children and also for cultural preservation, different elements, forces and powers, and even different formulas. As an example, different herb formulas or medicines from different trees were given actually names and are called gods. But to control people, they were telling them they were beings. But it didn't make sense to people who really didn't understand nature, and so they had to get rid of that and say there's only one God type thing, and then give it an image of a man, if you get the point, so that you would stay focused. And then all of these anthropomorphic comprehensions were no different than you dealing with letters of an alphabet that symbolizes sound, but then you also deal with letters of the alphabet that actually deal with forms of the body. Meaning that you could take, say, some of the ancient alphabet forms and actually put them on bodies because they also represent your body. They also represent what you've made, not just sound. Now, people aren't told that because all of the dogma systems would collapse overnight. However, it is known by all scholars already that that's the truth. Now, so the deal of it is, the idol gods would be the mysteries that evolve and that are been taught to humans, that these different so-called gods are all different creator guys competing with each other, and you're supposed to dismiss them and just worship whichever one they say for you to be worshiping, when you're really not clear on that either, if you get the point. But at the same time, they're dismissing everything else. What they're really doing is killing the culture. But it's not looked at that way. It's not recognized that way because most people can't think past their eyes. They can't see past the immediate moment. Are we clear? So what you have is really the priesthood being amongst warmongers that are actually killing earth culture for their own personal gain. It appears to people who don't understand this that they're trying to clear up your concepts of the honor to the Creator that you're negligently not acknowledging. When the real deal is that they're attacking you. But they know if you don't have a background that you can't see through the attack. Because by the training, you would be looking at things shallow. Are we clear? This is why when it comes to ancient customs and traditions, they seek to destroy them or alter or modify the language and burn books so that you lose reference. Are we clear? Because once you start getting into the culture, the concept of what the masses have always thought that what they think God is, it isn't. And I say it, and they, and them is what it is. And yet it's uncomfortable because we want to get into, to support the monotheistic format that was set up by Amun-Ra, who was competing with other rulers. Are we clear? And so to lock the history out, they won't say Ra. They'll just say Amen. So they'll make a sublimation or submission to whatever format that is presented to you by the priesthood, and then end it with Amen, which sends them right back to the same root. Are we clear? And not say Amen-Ra, because then you have to research and you'll start finding out the monotheistic format that was commanded upon humanity that did not exist prior to Amen-Ra's operations of competition to getting other rulers out of the way. Are we clear? And so therefore, Amen has credit for being now Elohim. Are we clear? All law, or Allah. Go ahead.
So,
Give her the mic. And remember, it's only complex because people have a lack of knowledge in traditions and culture, not because it's not understandable. It's easily understood. It can be understood by a child once they understand what came about or how we got to where we are. Then all you have to do is start doing a back trace, and logically and uncomfortably for many people, all these so-called dogmatic platforms that they've been calling their religious salvation falls apart. It doesn't change your life. I mean, you won't stop breathing, the water won't stop flowing, the sun won't stop coming up. However, your pockets will be heavier because the priesthood will not be in them as deeply as they have been. Go ahead, sis.
peace. I just wanted to say or ask a question. Who is Amun-Ra?
Amun-Ra, when you do research, you're going to find out. Let's do a reminder. Kaaba. In one corner, we got Aunt Hagar's grave. In the other corner, we got a meteorite. You know what that meteorite symbolizes?
No.
One, that we're not just on this planet, and it also symbolizes, because it's physical symbolism of other worlds. Are we clear?
I'm trying to grasp.
Yeah. Now, so this is what I'm presenting to you. Use your divine mind and stop trying to match it to what you've been told in the name of our beliefs. And just look at the logistics, the logic of it all. Why would they put a meteorite in Kaaba and then Hagar's grave in the other side? And then if you remove that cloth of Kaaba, it's feminine. Now, Aunt Hagar ruled in southwest of Mexico, southwest Africa, now called Central America, the Yucatan. Yet her grave is in Mecca on the other side. Then there's a meteorite there. I think it's just a nice jewel in there. These are keys to preserve culture, though culture has been lost. Are we clear? We traveled to other planets. That's number one. And beings from other planets traveled to here. Number two. Number three, interstellar travel is ancient, not new, and not future. Are we clear?
Yeah.
We've been on this planet for millions of years, not a couple thousand. Everything that's been told to you by the priesthood and their rulers, who are also part of the priesthood, they've been lying to us all. They needed to control the people. This is why the monotheistic platform was set up by Amun-Ra, who's also can be called Yahweh.
So, does Prophet Muhammad have anything to do?
Fictional. Prophet Muhammad is, in the priesthood, Prophet Muhammad is the northern and the southern hemisphere of this universe from the view of the planet Earth, and cannot be painted or imaged because there's too many stars to map. For the masses, He's a physical man for control purposes. For the scientists, for the priesthood, it is the universe, northern and southern hemisphere of the universe from the view of the planet Earth, and cannot be painted and cannot be made an image of, for there's too many of them. So symbolically, you'll see the juntas, or what we call energy centers or the pyramids, multiple levels. Energy centers and over points, they would be used for navigation from outside coming in, and also in certain areas they're used for sacrificial altars. That's a fact. Also, symbolically, because the crystalline form, the smallest form, when you go beyond the quark, you go to atom, then you go quark, and you go beneath. For the electric, for the visible magnification, and for what electrical signals will show, everything is formulated from a crystalline form. And thus the pyramid is a symbol for civilization on this planet, not just this one, on others too.
Dark matter.
And in your secret societies, they would refer to sometimes the pyramid, the symbol, as Muhammad's mountain. And what that would symbolize for those who evolved into the cosmoculture of the universe. And not a being, not a man. And so, like for instance, if you, being a woman, were taken into a secret society, as an example, they call them different names, Eastern Star, Daughters of Isis, Daughters of Esther, Easter, Esther, Astarte. Yeah, get over it. And then they give you a pyramid too, and they give you that jewel, that pyramid with the eye of Allah on it, etc., which means you were taken to the mountaintop. And so if you see somebody use the code word, I've been to the mountaintop, what they've told you they passed their 33rd degree. In the knowledge of humanity relative to mother and son, sometimes referred to as Masonry, i.e. Islam, i.e. Sufism, i.e. Sabaism, Gnosticism, and they get different degrees. And all of this is earth culture. And then to keep the masses from it, you tell them it's evil or it's devil worship so that they don't study it, so they don't recognize real culture on the planet and dump all the dogma systems that they've been told is religion, which they'll discover is all fiat, all of it's fiat. Does it mean that there's no good in it? Do you comprehend where I'm coming from? So yeah. I'm not condemning people don't equate it with morals and ethics, just put it that way. Meaning that person needs not go to mosque, church, synagogue, temple to be moral. That's the natural responsibility of beings that are called humans. And the fundamental consciousness of right and wrong is with you when your mother shed you. There ain't no man teach you, ain't no man say you nothing. You already know it by nature. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, mother can teach, because I remember when I was in the crib, you do something wrong, mom look at you and didn't even need language. You know what she said, don't do that no more, and you did one of them things, because baby knows. So let's get over, see, it's difficult for all of us, because what's happened with us, in the heart of hearts, we know that we've been played, but we have not trusted ourselves for so many generations that we're afraid to think for self. And we're waiting for the priesthood to come remedy us, to save us, to bring us a sandwich. Meanwhile, you can do a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, for instance, look at the dynamics of the nature of things. All right, I'm a male form, right? I can do multiple things, but I can't do anything that my mother didn't give me in the first place. Are we clear? But the psychology of dogmatism that's taught to the people is that this form of this masculine form is superior to the mother that created it. That's psychological falsehood. Are we clear? But also, that psychology is used to create competition to divide us so that the priesthood can rule too. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. When the nature of things is woman is a governor by nature. Now, and let's not get into the deliberate design competition type thing, but let's get real about this. Men can do multiple things as sons of woman, but in the reality, you want things run right, women are probably going to do it 99% of the time. The credit often goes to men because women put their men out there because we are the projection of you. And then sometimes over periods of time, therefore, the measurement of the credit is coming to sons. And then there's that psychology that's promoted rather than looking at that this is a balance of nature. There's a balance there that's will be recognized, not a threat, not a competition. Are we clear? As an example, for those who know some of the traditions and culture and customs of the ancient Naga people and Twa people in the north, right? They'll make reference to the scientific complexes in the Yucatan with the hybrid operations of Patagonia, as an example, or the making of the Roman hybrid that you call today falsely white people, or Romans, red man, right? And they'll make reference to Yaku. You'll see the hybrid Europeans make movies like Dr. Moreau's Island, which Moreau is Moorish Latin, which is actually one of your linguistic forms in Central Africa that's known today as French. The concept of the people is that French comes from the hybrid Europeans in Central Europe. No, that's actually an African dialect. Are we clear? Are we clear? Mm-hmm. Now, so people will talk about Dr. Yaku, and they'll talk about in the Bible Jacob, or Jacob's children, Jacob's ladder type thing. That's the only Yaku. So they'll talk about Yaku and the hybrid experiments in Patagonia with the scientific complexes at the Great Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico that they tore down and made cities with to block the history in the North Gate here, so the people don't know, because of reconstruction of history, that the world's largest pyramid was over here, not over there. Are we clear? To disconnect mentally your connection. So people give credit to those experiments, also referring to him as the father of the devil, right? However, very little reference is given to the 12 women scientists that really did the work. So they're looking at Dr. Yaku, and no one talks about the 12 women scientists. Who do you think really did this work?
It's with Jacob's ladder would that be referring to the DNA strands?
Exactly. See, and so, but that would be anthropomorph. Stay with me.
Because I know there was some disconnection.
Stay with me.
Okay.
This is what's important for now and for now for them. Not just a political platform, but the reality of telling people the truth about the anthropomorphic form, not to condemn them, but so that they can understand the books and understand where we went awry, but not accidentally. The priesthood did this to us for their own selfish causes and reasons. So Yaku's ladder is actually genetic mutations and testing. Half of the vegetables that is sold in the markets, particularly in North America, are hybrids. The problem that we're having is that they won't tell the truth that they're hybrid as humans. And so a lot of the what you would call the original blood Asiatic Africans get confused when they have these problems with the hybrid Europeans who are half human and half Negro or monkey. And then some of them got a little bit of alien, what you might call not from this earth blood. And because logically, by the nature of their genetic form, the sun the physical sun even treats them differently. The sun, we have the problem over these generations of trying to modify them to save them from the sun because the sun's trying to kill them. Because they're not even attuned to this planet. That's not a condemnation. These are things that need to be looked at, and particularly with our people, since you have been subdued, which is really what this Moorish movement is about, is to bring you back to the light, bring you back to a consciousness that you can start taking responsibility, look in the mirror and start solving problems because it came from you. You're not without power. You have abdicated power on multiple fronts. So you need to know some of your real history and so that you can start fixing things because you don't believe in yourself anymore. So you don't think that you're the scientist that you are. Are we clear? However, the solution is going to come from you, whether you like it or not. It must come from you because it has no other source to come from. Go ahead.
Islam, I think that may be a perfect segue in fixing things. And you and I had a discussion with regard to something that happened in the last week or so with our sister.
Now for them.
Right, our sister Tamara. When you talk about fixing and correcting things,
yes,
you know, I would love for her to join you and really kind of help us, because so many people, you know, are going through the process of name correction, declaration, and name correction, and they want to know, like, what now? What do you do?
And
Sitting around with papers and
yes,
and twiddling their fingers, don't know what to do.
You know what I have to say about that? It is those experiences that intelligent people among us sometimes must go through to really look at. We know that spirit is breath, but we're talking about the essence. For them to have those experiences, to see beyond the surface. Because, number one, that lesson, will show you, if you never knew or never believed any of this, how much people know about you while looking you in your face, and unless you have a certain degree of knowledge and act upon it, you'll never know that they have another view of the world and you and all of your interchanges that you do normally every day. Except when you walk over that line of walking from the dead to the living, i.e. from the corporation, and to the living soul, you begin to recognize that this politics is deeper than you thought it was. It is more prevalent than you thought it was. And it is common and veiled in your face. And these people is not necessarily to need to be a member of some secret society. Is the everyday people dealing with you every day, and the real deal is they will show you how asleep you've been. Tamara, can you come share with us?
Sure.
I can stand up.
And I want you to be thorough.
Okay. Well, I need to sit down.
Now but then. You want me? I don't want to move to here. Bring that chair over here.
Yes, please.
Like seriously?
I'll bring the chair over. Because there's some things that I really feel like. Just sit in the master.
Lesson in learning.
You say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Here
In
I am.
itself.
Here I am. Here I am. First, I'd like to thank Grand Sheik for all his wonderful wisdom that he has bestowed on us, and also give him thanks for the 40th years he's been beating these streets down to wake us up. I must honestly say, since day one, I've been paying attention. So, with that being said, Grand Sheik always talk about, and what we must know is our universal will, in which he was talking about. We have a universal will to our language, our culture, our name, and one of the things that we focus on the most is our name correction. So with that being said, I'm going to read this. This is civil cases affirming the validity of common law name and other identity changes. To begin, one ought to keep aware that at common law, you are sovereign. Sovereign, not a sovereign citizen. You are sovereign. You're cloaked under sovereign of your nation, which means you are the court. Anyway, it is good to remember that if you are functioning as civil law, which means in another jurisdiction capacity, you never give up the right to function at any time as a sovereign at common law. So with that being said, you look at your name correction, your proclamation. Your proclamation is your standing. You know this one? The proclamations that we have, whether your proclamations were through RV Bay Publications, whether your proclamations was through Grand Sheik, Tarik Bay personally, who holds the Great Seal of the Moorish Order of the Round Table, whether your proclamations are through Asir Ducatiers, Toriana Obashingo El, or whomever body politics have formed on these great lands we call America, which are the lands of the Aboriginal Autochthonous people. This is who we are. This is our proclamation of the correction of the separation from the jurisdiction, our universal will. So when one proclaims the name, you proclaim it in common law status. Now, do you have to go to a court jurisdiction? Because we must know that civil law operates in a foreign jurisdiction. And the reason it's operating in a foreign jurisdiction is because that we have a usurper that has usurped the resources, as Grand Sheik just said. Over 50% of our resources, fruits, vegetables, clothing, all that has been usurped. The Silk Road has been usurped. So we do not have that direct access to that information to be able to freely exchange in commerce as we once did, and which we set up. It was set up by us. Commerce is everything that you see has been hypothecated by the usurpers. So when we say civil law, we're talking about now in this current state a foreign jurisdiction that is usurping the natural people resources. So within that jurisdiction, you are not getting the permission of that jurisdiction to name you. You're placing on the record as an affirmative of who I am in my living capacity and how I would deal with you in my living capacity and operate with you. Now, you can operate personally. You can contract however you want to in many of names. Like I may operate Tamara Denise L in my personal name. I may operate as Project of Providence in another way. So you can have as many names because that's whatever you create is the creature of what you create. So when you also must know that No court issue order or name change is also required. The name change is done at will. Just like you perform your name correction at will through your society, through your body politics, you are placing on a record of affirmative. Now, let's get to the experience, what I experienced. Now, I operate personally in a foreign jurisdiction as far as exchange of labor for compensation. So in learning all this information that I have been studying, I understood that when I corrected my appellation through the common process, through my body politics of society, when I understood this, I understood that I wanted to kind of look at other ways to make sure that this foreign jurisdiction is aware of who I am. Because one of the things that I do know and see is that you can turn on any television, you can turn on any radio, you can turn on any outlet, any social outlet, and you will see the Aboriginal people, autonomous people being victimized based on operating in full life. Why is that so? There's not an understanding of who's who and what's what. So I wanted, for my personal self, and I'm hoping that with this message, that it's not something that all would want to do, because some people have exercised what I've learned of the stirring up of their gift. Some people have stirred up their gifts where they have the ability. Oh, it is?
No, try that one.
Try this.
Yeah. See if that's better.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I heard
Can you
you
hear me
time, but you're saying it's breaking up.
So I understand that a lot of us have stirred up our gifts, such as Grand Sheik. Grand Sheik stirred up his gift a long time ago, over 40 years ago. He operates through the gift of his hands and know how to build homes, know how to tear a home down, know how to build a car, knowing how to paint, knowing how. So his labor is through the exchange of labor amongst the people that he contract with. He understands that. There's other Moors around us who have stirred up their gifts. They create soaps. They sell soaps. They sell oil. They sell astrology, things of that nature. So they have stirred up their gifts within. Some of us have been heavily indoctrinated, and I raise my hand to that. We have been heavily indoctrinated because it's based on our time period of which we were as our environment. So there was a whisper during our environment in the 70s and 80s of go to school, get good grades, y'all know the song, get a job, right? So and after that, you got that 40 plan going on. You wanted 40 years on this job, and then you get a retirement. So that was the song during this, us raising up in the 70s and 80s. And then along that, we had the propaganda message of the shows that we watched. We had Bill Cosby. We had A Different World. We had Facts of Life. All those shows was planting a seed of the Inquisition process of go to school, get good grades, get a job. It's to keep you in that paradigm to operate for someone else and not within yourself, not to stir up your gifts. So a lot of us find ourselves now at this crossroad where we know that we have something within us that must come out. So we know that was in us that we must now stir up, but now we're at this crossroad where we have contracted with the foreign jurisdiction. And now we're trying to, how are we going to navigate our own personal ship as well as navigate amongst another ship without injury? So we're all, a lot of us are there. It was safe to say that a lot of us are there. Some have went over to, took assignments in the military. may have gotten injured, they get a check. Some may have retired, they're getting a benefit from a foreign jurisdiction. Some may have got injured through that contract and may be getting some type of compensation. But people are at a crossroad of how to operate in full life. So I said, I was speaking to some other Moors, Brother Hassan Ghazil Bey, as well as Brother Osman Bey, and we was brainstorming about this entire process. And what Brother Osman Bey down in the Georgia territory, Georgia corporation, he went and fulfilled the process of putting the petition on the record to affirm who he is and his common law proclamation, like this is your lawful proclamation, whereas civil is a legal petition proclamation. So that's the difference between lawful and legal. And so as we was discussing the information and he provided the return of the information and came back, it was favorable. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try that in this jurisdiction, in Delaware corporation. So as I went through the entire process, and the first thing you must do is, in this Delaware corporation, one of the first things they requires you to do is to place an ad in the newspaper for 3 weeks. The state is like the legal publication to state that you are changing your name from this name to that name. It doesn't tell you to put why, just tell them that you have to put the public on notice that you're making this change. Did that. That was 75 notes. For everyone in the Delaware, Newcastle jurisdiction, that is 75 notes to do that. Okay, and after you receive, yes?
They didn't ask you if you had a court order for that?
No, this is because when you go online to, you can just Google like Delaware name change, it'll give you the steps. That is the first step, is you must first you must first pay for the newspaper publishing. And once you receive your affidavit of publication, then you add the application of publication to the full remaining of the petition to file that. And of course, they require commercial paper to file it in their jurisdiction. Now, with dealing with something like this, I don't get into the informer Pauperis of I'm not going to pay a compensate. This is a compensation. I'm not going to compensate them in their jurisdiction for my will to place it in their jurisdiction. I'm not going to get into that. As you can see, you can already tell it's de facto because it's like you can buy these things. This is like a receipt book. It doesn't have any type of legal heading to show it came from that jurisdiction. Like this literally could have came from you. It said, I paid you 85 notes to place on the record my lawful will, universal will, in their legal jurisdiction, foreign jurisdiction. So I compensated them 85 notes. So in doing so, I went there on the 7th. They said that, oh, we have a date on the 17th. I said the 17th. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, then you guys declare that as your federal holiday? So that's the first thing that crossed my mind, that was declared as your federal holiday. So I'm like, okay, the 17th. So I called back like a couple of days to see if maybe she made a mistake with the date. No, it's true. We're open. So 17th, just February 17th came. I went to the location for the petition notification, and I noticed that it's on the 5th floor. Now, as he was talking about earlier, he was talking about numerology. Number 5 represents man. So I'm like, 5th floor. Well, why is it on the 5th floor? So is this about the subjugation of man? So as I get to the 5th floor, I see that 5A, I had to go to 5B. 5A was dealing with extortion of placing the Asiatic males. They had like a box full of ankle monitors, and they had a line where they signed to agree to the extortion of so much X of dollars per month. So it was like this was at will. One of the brothers did not understand what was going on, and he wanted to, and you could see the will in him wanting to challenge it. And you can see that they was ready to want to kidnap him. You know, they were sitting on ready. So I had to go in 5B. Okay, as I went into the area that I had to go into, now there was probably about 10 of us in there for name change. And I know all 10 of them, and there was like 2 behind me. So there was 10 in front of me, I counted, and there was 2 behind me. So it was total about 13 of us in there. Now, it was running late, and I said that was the first thing I noticed to run late. That's off. This whole thing was just off to me. And then when the magistrate, posing as a judge, walked into it, I saw a different energy walk into the room. I said, ugh, I'm gonna be dealing with I know I'm about to go to battle with 2 different energies going on, because the way he flamed in the room, I said, ugh. So I knew that was about to occur. So when he came in there, he literally, it was like he was sitting on ready, like he couldn't wait to get to me. This is where the story really gets good. And so he rushed through everyone. Oh, did you swear on the penalty of perjury that you're changing your name just in order to not to defraud the U.S. government? Everybody was like, yes. And okay, why are you changing your name? Oh, because my grandmother's name is that. Oh, because I found out that my father wasn't my father and he was actually my mother's boyfriend, and I don't want that name anymore. But listen, they're exercising their will. They're exercising their will, but they're in that jurisdiction without the knowledge of it's their will. You see what I'm saying? This knowledge was lost. Even though it was in them, they still felt as if they needed the magistrate to sign off on them for it. So another one was, oh, my stepfather just adopted me, and he's a cool dude, so I'm gonna go ahead and take on his name. Okay, great. I'll sign off on it. Enjoy your life. Have a nice day. So here comes the good part. He was ready for me, and I was ready for him. We was both ready to go to battle. So as I step up to the podium, he states, go through the little spiel. I see you want to change your name from Tamara Denise Williams to Tamara Denise L. On the penalty of perjury, that you will not, you're not looking to defraud the U.S., yada, 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 yada. Okay. Well, I have one. I don't mind signing off on your petition. He said, well, what reason do you have for wanting to change your name? I said, religious independence. He said, okay. He had to back up. Oh boy, we get into these constitution now in his mind. Because right now, I'm feeling he already took out his sorcery. I took out mine before I even entered the building. He just realized he was late. I had already took mine out, so I was ready to rumble right then and there. So he was like, okay, so you can see him kind of setting himself up. And then the, what you call it, person, the little stenographer, she moved. That's a chess move. You don't make a chess move. I know I'm the player. I'm not being played. I'm not on the board. So I didn't make a move. I didn't see him make a move, so why did she just move? And I said, okay. I said, you asked a question under penalty of perjury, which started the oath. So if I'm on the oath, that means that you're on the oath, constitutional oath, correct? I said, so she needs to move back to her place because you're in the bench, I'm not. So that means that her typing is my voice. He told her to move back. She had to move back. So he, at this point, he's getting a little, you can see his little robe starting to do a little dance. And he was like, well, I have a problem with you not just writing religious independence. And I was like, well, what would that problem be? He said, well, I got a problem with your attachments. I said, well, could you state for the record, what are those problems? And he said, well, you know, I don't mind your religion. I said, excuse me, it's not your will. It's not your, would you just keep cutting me off? I said, no, I'm not cutting you off. I'm objecting you because it's not your will to tell me what I can put down as my religious independence. Whether, no matter what it is, it's not your universal will to tell me that. And he said, well, I'm just saying, all these attachments you have in here about, I don't know about this and that. I said, what is this and that? I need you to state what's this and that. I said, are you talking about House Joint Resolution 1933, our right to use our Ellen Bay as our code? Well, I don't know what that is. I don't have to adhere to any of the laws of Pennsylvania. He's our nation, our jurisdiction. I said, oh, excuse me. I said, are you saying that the United States does not recognize our nation? We don't have a treaty? He said, well, what I'm saying, I said, no, I need you to put on the record what you're actually saying. So I knew at this point, he's not going to do that. I know he's going to dance, but my voice is on there. My voice is on there because she's typing. And, well, you know, we have all these, and I said, okay, so what are the other documents? I said, are you talking about the divine constitution and bylaws? Is that what you're talking about? Because I'm speaking it, she got to type it. So he was trying to omit the whole time what he was trying to omit from the attachments. So you're saying that you have a problem with the attachments, but you will not say what the attachments are. So I'm saying, so are you saying you have a problem with our divine constitution and bylaws of the Moorish Science Temple of America? Well, you know what? I said no. I need to understand what you're saying in order to say that you're omitting that. Are you saying that you have a problem with our society proclamation? Still, that I have a right, my universal will to change my name. Is that what you're saying you have a problem with? Well, what I'm saying is I have a problem with Morris coming in here. I say, objection, could you please state the stare decisive case where you're going to make that decision? And he was like, but what I'm saying, I said, no, I need to know what you're actually saying because you really haven't said anything. I said, at this point, I don't need your permission. At this point, it's being placed on the record. That is being placed on the record. He said, but could you just really write religious independence on there? I said, sure. So the bailiff came walking over, shaking in his boots, and I wrote religious independence, documents omitted, and I wrote every document that was omitted. I'm a chess player, not on the board. So anybody else saying I'm the king and queen, not on the board, the player. So then he was like, well, oh shoot. He was like, okay, well, it say your application, I said it states appellation. My noble appellation should not be in all caps. Well, I can't make anyone, type your name, your appellation. I said the way you want them to. I said my noble appellation is not to be in all caps. That is placing on the record. He said, well, how would you like it to be? Because I have a problem. And then that's when he wanted to hold up the the seal, the certification. Well, you know, it's already typed. I said, well, we have a problem here because it needs to be corrected. I'm not accepting that. He said, well, how should it, how do you, what do you want me to do? I said, retype it in proper grammar. He was like, okay, well, you're going to have to wait for a minute. Now, at this time, during this whole debate, he hadn't cleared the room of the last two people. He done ran them out the courtroom until he called them back in there. And then I'm waiting. And then he asked me to leave the room so he can finish up with the two people. And they was in and out in like 1.2 seconds. So thereafter, they asked me to come back in the room. I came back in the room. They handed me, supposed to be in the correction. This time I see they sorcering it up again. They have the straw name, the trade utility name, misspelled. So anytime you do that, that is not it. That is not even a derivative. A misspell is not even a derivative because that is derived from your birth certificate. So if it's derived from my birth certificate and it's been tethered onto the person, if I try to give this to someone else, they're going to say, well, this is not you. Because they understand legally that's not derived from your birth certificate. So I said, this time I was ready to just take his head off. I was like, that's incorrect and void. That must be done over. And he was like, what is wrong? I said, you need to give this to him so he can look at it. He looked at it and said, it's E-A-R-A, it's E-R-A, should be A-R-A, and the S is missing. I said, that's correct. Please correct that for the record. When I left there, I literally felt like I was had just went into a battle, like a spiritual battle. And and it's weird because when I left there, I had to call Brother Hassan and I shared with them what happened, and they was shocked because it did not occur to Osama in the Georgia territory. And one of the things that we saw the difference was between this corporation, and the reason why I'm correcting myself when I say territory, because Delaware is not a territory. Delaware does not own land. Georgia is not a territory, not own land. It's a corporation. It's a license, a charter license that, of that area. So that's why I'm correcting myself. The reason why that we were able to see the problem that occurred here in the Delaware Corporation as opposed to in the Georgia Corporation is because the Georgia Corporation has a proclamation on the record that states that the Moors have a right to their free will national standing, whereas the Delaware Corporation do not, in which I've already started working on this week to put in a proclamation for the Delaware Corporation so the Moors could be recognized in this land of which the Lenape Moors are the ones who gave them the ability to even have that constitution. It all started here. So that's why there must be a proclamation on the record in this area, because this is where it started. So,
Any ad lib that you feel necessary? I want you to be thorough. What is your question?
well,
Question.
one of the things that I see that our Moors must do is get involved with body politics. In my opinion, I believe that what the Grand Sheik attempted to do 40 years ago with the Great Seal, which is our Moorish Emperor Davan, which is our body politics, which is our protection. And I don't know what occurred some people probably said, you know, you're moving too slow, bro, or you should do it this way, or you should do it that way. And you know how we get very zealous and jealous and overextended, and we don't run the race in a fashion of which we have, you know, I ran track. Now, if you ask me to do some long distance running, I'm gonna tell you no thank you. But if you put me on a track field in a 4x100, I'm your girl, number 2. But however, we have to learn how to start going the distance. And we don't go the distance. This room should be packed. We have, and we are very grateful for our online presence. But we have Moors who are molested, kidnapped, everything, every day, right here in this triangle area that they call, you know, Delaware, Philadelphia.
Tri-state.
That's what it's called?
Tri-state.
Tri-state. Delaware, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, what is it?
Delaware, New Jersey, PA.
PA. Well, we're gonna include DC and all that area. You know, as our foremothers and forefathers established the various different body politics to represent the various nations, I feel that we must exhibit those same principles once and again. And if your body politics is working, because, you know, it would be delusional to have just one body politics with the amount of body of people that we have to work with, because we are the majority. We're not the minority. And I thought about it as a child, when I was being educated, and I was in this program from kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade. This program was called Minority to Majority. And I was probably one of the little bitty specks, you know, they said little brown hue in the whole population. But I thought that was weird within itself as a child. But the different body politics must band together. We must band together, because what our biggest, one of the things that I see is that the colonizers, they don't like each other. They all don't like each other. But they both agree on one thing. They both agree to band together in our oppression. That's one agreement that they all agree on. Whether it's publicly or private, that they all in agreement of that, because they carry the status of white. So that's an agreement. They all agree on that. If you carry that racial status and you adhere to that racial status, that means that you are in agreement of the racial construction and oppression of the original peoples of the land. Bottom line. The next thing that I see is that all of us, we don't like each other. And that's okay. We don't like each other. Some of our skin folks are not our kin folks. We get that. But one of the things that we fall short at, we don't unify in our uprise. And that's our biggest problem. That's where our unity lies. That we don't keep, it doesn't matter if we like each other. We don't have the unity in coming together to rise up together. So that's what I see.
Good.
Any questions, concerns, criticism? I don't know, because I'm normally behind the mic, so I can't see.
Now, this is what I have to say. That magistrate is probably Knights of Columbus, but your communication was, and their discomfort, your communications and his discomfort is, now you know, but you already know that a lot of Moors who claim to be conscious don't know, particularly some of the Moors that are in some of the club systems, who have been limited by certain people who should have told them these things years ago, who betrayed Prophet Mudrali and suppressed the civic operations of the Moorish movement among themselves, not among the people. Because remember, The Moorish Divine and National Movement is Rotarian, it's universal. So that's out of their jurisdiction to suppress. But what it shows you is that that hybrid European immediately was uncomfortable with you, because immediately when you made those corrections, what you was doing is messing with their stock market. Now you know that. The problem that you have with many of our people is that they're not aware of that fact as that being one of the reasons, not because of just because of the historical fact, and because of the correctional fact of your own right of inheritance and your right of claim of liberties, all right, and your right of claim of self-jurisdiction, which is another factor. It is the fact that many of our people are not aware that nationalization is actually inclusive of proper civic instruction, and that it actually is a clarification and justification of clarification of a jurisdictional claim made upon you and your estate that is not being made public.
Bingo.
And when you, because part of what you did is what? Proclaimed your nationality. You must know what proclaim actually means. Proclaim means to make publicly known, public record, public proclamation known to the public. Concept of that they would be the jurisdictional authority to do so is a misconception of authority.
Exactly.
But it's an action because you are aware that they have instruments with a name in the corporate operations of death on your behalf, and assume that you did not know that. And so essentially in layman's terms, you know, for a child to understand, you just told that magistrate, salesman, and auctioneer for the Delaware corporation, foreign corporation, operating on the land, distinguished from the land, operating really for the sea. And we're not talking about SEA only maritime, we're talking about SEE, the Pope of Rome, under the Roman Curia. Now, of course, his assumption is that you didn't know that, and his test with you was to see if you did, which was what the questions were concerned. Now, your comeback to him when you made your chess moves, what you were doing was checking him every time he tried to switch from the white blocks to the black blocks type thing. Because you knew what he was doing. In other words, you just wrote them. And you were allowing him the respect of maintaining the false integrity of the claim of bayship governing in this territory, or not creating confusion. You just want to clean your mess up.
Yes, I did have to tell that. I do remember that. I do remember at a point when I said, I came in peace and I'm going to leave in peace.
Yes.
Yes. I do remember now. I do remember having to tell him that when I said, "Well, you're one step away on the constitutional line. You are aware of that." I said, "Now let's be clear. I came in peace, and I'm going to leave in peace. So let's keep going. Let's play this game and get it out the way." Yes. And so, as you can see, they're all, you probably can't see, they're all caps, utilities.
Yeah.
Remained all caps, and proper grammar. So, yes, it's on the record.
Now, what occurs in this situation is that it can't be used on the stock market. Now, they can't build a bond on it.
Exactly.
So what you've just done is killed treasury bonds and the allonges attached to them. Also, this is the other deal. For him to acknowledge that is to acknowledge that you're not liable to any taxes to them.
Exactly.
That's the allegiance to the U.S. corporation that he's talking about. People think it means citizenship. That means you are not obligated to the tribute to the pseudo Queen of England under their secret Treaty of Verona, which he has the responsibility of collecting and enforcing through those subdivisional agencies.
Well, that's why he wanted me to get on the record. But if I
Well,
sign
there's a
this,
problem.
it's going to cause a problem. But if I sign this, you have to know that you're still a U.S. citizen. I say, excuse me, what do my national status have to do wouldn't be placing my name correction on the record. But what I'm saying, because you're not saying anything. Like, what are you saying?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say anything.
What he's really saying, this is what he's saying. You're telling me that you're not U.S. stock property of Austria
No, I'm
under the
not.
bond system and the marriage certificate and birth certificate that we have on the stock market?
No, I ran out the
And
plane.
you said, no, I'm not. You already know I'm not. What's that have to do with my birthright, which is sovereign? Now, the experience, the point that I'm making, and this is just for the listeners because they're going to have to analyze this. And they just shouldn't have to because it's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But because a lot of, again, confusion exists with the people around these matters because they have not been taught heritable status or what nationality actually is in its broad political concept. They think it's just historical fact, a religious right, etc. type, and it goes so far beyond that. It goes with your economics, particularly, which is really what he was talking about when he was saying he's going to create problems. Translation, if you just been blunt, you know you're effing up the stock market, and and this is what's going on in his mind. You got to recognize what's going on in his mind. Though she may be a single energy unit, which some people will call person, but single energy unit. That single energy unit has not minimal, multi-compound millions of fiat notes behind it that's operative through the Jesuit order, not just here, but around the world, upon which they build bonds to do stuff. Like, say, for instance, they want to build a building down for the United States Corporation. Say they clear an area down the border, and they need to, we're swamp type land, right? Which is, because there's a lot of waterways down here. And they need to fill it up and then build some big condominium that you think in your mind, even though it would be costly and they could generate a lot of finance, the actual finance that goes into it to construct it and prepare it can never be recouped. They're not looking at it that way. Why? Because they got bonds on people who think that it has nothing to do with them whatsoever. And when you corrected that, even with the grammatical construct, you were killing bonds that already exist on the stock market. Forget things that they do in the future. So therefore, that's going to create a problem.
And I kept saying, for whom?
He's thinking bookkeeping. He's thinking his obligation. Why is he in that office? He's in that office to enforce the agency operations because they have to answer to the Circle Church and the Chancery on Fleet Street, England, via the seat of the Roman goddess Columbia, Washington, D.C., who has to answer to that. And all of their bond systems, their major bonds, is not based on the hybrid European descendants who are operative in North America under the Whiggamore Party, claiming falsely to be Americans and claiming falsely to be white people. They're on the people of Moabite, Canaanite descent, i.e. the real people of the land. They've been living off your virtues. So therefore, it's going to cause a problem. The other deal of it is called the domino effect. And so now they're going to try to use, we're going to try to use a guilt trip. Well, these Moors are coming down here and they're doing, trying to make it up on translation. We got jurisdiction over them. How come we can't have jurisdiction over you?
Right.
Translation, they know what the hell they was doing. So why is it that you know what the hell you're doing? You're creating a problem. Translation is telling you that you're right. But also, he's also telling you that they're using you, and you're not allowing them to use you by exercising a right. What right? a sovereign birthright, because it's not only the economic system, it's also a counter to the psychic attacks on your chakras, because your chakras is the sovereignty. And that's the truth, sis. All right.
So does every,
We want you on mic.
I thought you had it.
And I want to remind everybody too, this is why we can go and you're not finished, because you're going to analyze this more and go deeper into this, what people would call ethereally or spiritually, because that lesson to you, it was not just the surface. Look into it deeper.
Oh, it allowed me to see.
You know, like,
Oh, I'm sorry. What it allowed me to actually sit back and see is all the different latches and spider webs that we have been connected to, and to be able to see the ways in which they can be tattered. And there, for me, yes, it started with my lawful proclamation, but once you take a stand in the jurisdiction of the legal process in the public of who you are, now that to me, it marries the understanding of how to properly navigate your ship. So that, for me, I was able to now see a lot clearer in that entire process. That was for me.
so does every unconscious Moorish person who claims their nationality have to go through the same process?
No, not necessarily. No. What the process that she's demonstrating is a process of self and them proving. Meaning, it's more of a lesson, because it really is not necessary. Which means, as soon as you start your exercise, the fact of the matter is, this the two things that I want to make clear. And this would be another conversation. So keep me on point, but I'm going to throw this out there for people to think. What is the problem that Donald Trump, representing the Republic order of the constitutional government that was overthrown in 1871, and the opposition by the Ku Klux Klan operations of the Democratic Party, is because they really know that technically, even though in principle, many of the arguments that Donald Trump is really presenting are lawfully proper. However, the seat of the presidency was abandoned in 1871, and in spite of him supporting constitutional principles, technically he's not president because the order doesn't exist. And so there, it's sort of like criminals arguing about criminals. It's sort of like two-party arguing on in relationship to a jurisdiction that neither one of them have right to.
Right.
Although technically Donald Trump is correct, even though people who don't understand government think he's out to lunch because they've been following what you would call the mainstream media. Now, the other problem that they have is that Donald Trump, because they have maintained the offices de facto, they're all de facto, but because the true heirs, which is you, which is these Moors, who've been trained for generations that their identity is their belief systems, i.e. Christian, Muslim, Jew, Hebrew, Israelite, that mentality, and they don't understand that they themselves collectively are the Moors. Not a belief system, not a club. It is the pedigree of your Phoenicians, Mandi, Twa people, the Algonquian, the Anasazi, the people called American Indians, all these labels, all of these people are Moors. They think it is because of misinformation. Think that is an organization started by Noble Drawley in 1913, when that is the political platform for the restoration of their proper status. Are we clear? They are the republic that was overthrown. The North and South fight that took place when they got Lincoln out is really the Albion order of the Crusaders of Constantinians operating the Spanish Inquisition against the Moors under the guise of Christianity, superseding and overthrowing the Constitution and the treaty. That's really the North and the South fight, not what they're telling you. The North fight is the fight against the treaty, i.e. the Constitution. Now, as these things are coming up, when you declare your nationality, going beyond what appears on this surface of stare decisis standing and res judicata to the high priest, he's looking at all of these things and even more, where most of the time we're looking at correcting their misuse and misclassification of us under the Negro Acts and under the Buck Act and under the Trading with the Enemy Act and with the operation of the bond system set up with the commercial mercenary war that's rewritten as the Civil War, which is actually the war against the Aboriginal Moors overthrowing the Americans, i.e. you. Nationalization is not only correcting yourself, because this is what they've done. They misclassified us, Negro, black, colored, and for some of us who think that we're getting some kind of sovereignty as American, Native, Indian, with a sovereignty promise, we'll give you a piece of land and a sandwich over here, and agree to that when actually that's a fiction. And it's not that we're not Indians in the sense that we've been called that. Because what they're really talking about is the Naga tribes of Dravidia, which are multiple tribes of actually Central African people that would deal with Nubia, Hikuta, Egypt, Algeria, Tunis, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, all of these people collectively, and the tribes that come through the Red Sea out of Egypt and start peopling the world are Moors. See, so you must know the history to know the politics. So when you see, like for instance, years ago, which Dooley will tell you, when they were having the Million Woman March and the Million Man March. Well, anyway, when they were doing the Million Woman March, myself and Abdullah Iljalil Mosley Bey was in the background negating the cost of the parking of the buses that were very high cost. Now, many people were in that march and don't even know the work that we were doing in the background. They rented the Collingswood Diner at that circle in Collingswood, in Jersey. They blocked off half of the restaurant. They had representatives of the mayor, representatives of the police department, medical, etc., planning, etc., security, mapping, etc. Me and Abdullah was there, and they blocked off half the restaurant. We met there and did planning for security. Myself and Abdullah were given walkie-talkies. We were at that Durand Center in Camden, on Broad Nickel, up on the top. And of course, I wrote that article. Yes,
I have the article.
I wrote the prior to that, for the Million Man March, I'm the one that wrote that article for the so-called preachers, to cooperate, that this was for everyone. And Dooley was dealing with economics collection and bookkeeping in this area for the Million Man March. So we had a background in all of that stuff that a lot of people don't know. So we know more than most people do about all of this stuff. But the point that I'm making is, they know who you are, they know what's up. Anyway, so the buses were not charged for parking that carried the women to the Million Man March. Million Woman March in Philadelphia. Now, many people don't know that because they don't know what's going on in the background. If we came out and tried to tell half them people, you know, what we were doing, they'd say, oh, that's that Moorish stuff. I'm Muslim, I'm Sunni, oh, I'm Ahmadiyya, oh, I'm Christian, you know, and that's how they don't understand the real politics. Sometimes people have to work on people's behalf who don't know the reality of the real world. The issue is we need to get them in the forefront to understand that their beliefs are like their clothing, change them. We'll put it in the washing machine. Sometimes you wore out. But they think that that is their identity. Are we clear? For yourself, all honor. Go grab that dictionary right there. Yes, sis. Yes, yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. And this is a short lesson. Any one of those dictionaries. You'll see right there. See that red dictionary right there?
This one?
If that's a dictionary.
Lexicon, is that a lexicon?
No, right, that red dictionary right there?
The one below it. That one?
Yeah.
Yes, that one, yes.
Now come over here. Now open it up. Now I want you to look up. I want you to look up more. Now I want you to look up black and then black more. Now.
I gotta get my glasses.
I'm ready for you.
Is that your glass?
No, I got extra ones. Brand new. Audience. No deal. Excuse me for them. But anyway, these are just readers. See, if they're not adequate, I got someone that's going to stay here too. Not only that, and here you go. There you go. We read at the house of Reawakening Minds. Let's wake up.
Is that black? I need my glasses.
Oh, you need to go get yours. Go ahead. Feel free, because we're working tonight. Now, this is the deal.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. You talked about it, Wield. The question was, is that necessary? And you talked about, you said no, it's at will. Now, for those who require some type of stare decisis case, the ones who have already went before the magistrate.
That gives you convincing support.
To give you convincing support, go to the case of McOta, 1991. And the ruling states that even if a civil court is granted permission by statute to change a name by petition and decree, this does not change the common law rule that a man, and when they say man, they talk about woman, humanity, that man is short for humanity, which means man and woman, may lawfully change his or her name at will and will be bound by any contract into which he or she enters under his adopted or reputed name, and that he or she may sue and be sued in that name. So explicitly, we can understand that a common law name change carries the same legal weight as a court-decreed name change. In this passage is also use of the wording at will. This is precisely what common law allows. No court-issued order of name change is required. The name change is done at will.
In other words, another way they need to say it is that the legal processes of those courts does not supersede
the common law.
The common law. In other words, you're superior. You're the judge. And the deal of this is they want you to keep submitting to their jurisdiction in matters that actually they have no jurisdiction whatsoever. In other words, you're submitting to a foreign jurisdiction to exercise a right that exists with you divinely at birth. I.e., you're taking a de jure position and submitting to a de facto platform that gives them jurisdiction in a matter that they have none. Meanwhile, they're charging you, meaning they're robbing you. And they're violating their oath to the Constitution and treaty while doing it. Then trick you into signing things, and as soon as you did it, you sanctioned them by will. That means you just gave them jurisdiction. You need to know that that's what you just did. In other words, they get you to violate the law in order for them to karmically not be in debt for what they just did to you, i.e. stole your birthright. And that's what the whole platform of their operations is, birthright stealing. As a matter of fact, that's why their Democratic Party was constructed in the first place, to build a political platform for their corruption of the overthrow of the Republic, i.e. treaty and constitution, the North, which is you. That's what the Civil War is all about. That's the truth.
What was that case again?
MacOlta, ULTA of 1981. I'm sorry, 1991. Mac, MC, ULTA, 1991, comma, 189, F as in Frank, period, 250, comma, 26, A, Apple, period, Bravo, period, Roger, period, 480.
Now, here, Dan, hold that to the thing, because I want to make some stickers so that she can move the page. Don't move the page. Here, and then, now I want you to read it says.
Wait a minute, which one, right here first?
Yeah. Now, you can see that's an adjective, right?
Yes.
Now, it's a compound word here, right? Now read it.
The word is black. Black, an adjective.
So now, immediately before you go any further, you know that it's an adjective, so it's not a noun, is it?
No.
So it's descriptive, isn't it? It's a modifier of a noun, isn't it?
Yes.
Therefore, it cannot be proper, can it?
No.
Read here.
Black, a Moor.
Is that a compound word or a single word? We're talking elementary grammar.
It looks like a compound.
No, it doesn't look like a compound word. It is a compound word. In other words, your glasses don't look like glasses, they're glasses.
It is a compound word.
All right, now read it.
Any dark-skinned person, especially an African Negro.
Get in the mic.
Any black-skinned person, especially an African Negro.
What does the word any mean?
More.
Any.
Any. Oh, any.
Does that separate or does that include all?
All.
So these people that claim to be Negroes, blacks, and Africans are all Moors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a secret. Is it in an ordinary dictionary? This is an ordinary dictionary. I can give you some other dictionaries if it's confusing to you.
This is the New College Edition, the American Heritage Dictionary.
All right, so now let's look in here. Let's look here. And this is short, just to instruct you.
More. One of the Muslim.
Get in the mic.
One of the Muslim people. I apologize. One of the Muslim people of mixed Berber, and Arab descent, now living chiefly in North Africa.
Now, what happens with most Moors? Instead of recognizing their bloodline, they say that they're Muslims. They're Muslims, that's a creed. Their bloodline, their pedigree, their identity is Berber. They're Moors, all of them. Now, 90% of the people think that whether they're Muslim, claim to be Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hebrew, Israelite, they think that they're not Moors because they think Moor is a religious belief. That's their pedigree. All of them. So, nationalization is one, you getting conscious of that, whether you were atheist is irrelevant. Are we clear?
Yes.
So they took your birthright in order to rob you. This is the politics that's going on the planet. That's why they've been destroying Africa. That's why they've been bombing Syria. That's why they've been bombing Iraq. That's why they want to bomb Iran. That's why they've been poisoning Venezuela. That's why they're attacking Brazil. That's why they attacked Cuba. All of these people are Moors. Get over it. And all I'm saying to you, and what I wanted to relate to you, if you remove the emotions of what you think or were told things are, and just deal with the basic math of what things are, you're a Moor. How's some other Moor going to tell you whether or not you can wear your garb, or whether or not you're wearing a fez or a turban, which don't make you? It is your bloodline, your pedigree is your birthright. If you didn't accept anything that they said or didn't say, you're more, get over it. The game of the politics on this earth is the Spanish Inquisition against the Moors, and the Constantinians conquered you under the Spanish Inquisition, conquered the Western Hemisphere, and that has been your politics of the entire modern world. Are we clear?
I'm clear.
Get over it. Nationalization is not only the politics, but you getting conscious here of what's really going on here. And this is why when she went before that de facto magi straight, who's a member of the Roman Curia, why he was upset, because now you're messing with their stock market. And you weren't supposed to know this. Who's been talking to you? You must be one of them Tajites. That's why them people who should have been telling these people this a long time ago don't like us doing what we're doing, liberating people. Because it ain't about anybody's belief. It's not about anybody's religion. That's cool if that's what you need. You know what I mean? You know, but I'm not interested in the railroad tracks on your drawers. Pull your pants up, brothers. You get the whole point?
Yes.
Respect yourself. Know yourself. Honor your mothers and your fathers. So when they're looking at you, you see, sis, this is what I'm relating to you. When the different brothers talk about the different sects of Islam they're in, or the different versions of Hebrew that they are, because Hebrew is a fiction too. That's true. It's what is, you understand, it's Hebrew. And it's something we did, it's not an identity. Are we clear?
Clear.
And the real deal is, you need to, if you know your Sabian background in philosophies and the Sunni philosophies, you understand it's not limited to what you're calling or think is Islam. Are we clear? It is the foundation of all the world's religions. It's the natural philosophies of the studies of nature and the chemistry of nature, the alchemy of nature, the alchemy of your mind, the elements of how the womb operates, how you create life, how you build life, who you are. Be you. Are we clear?
Yes.
And that's what they don't want. They don't want you to come to that realization, because the priesthood loses power over you and thus power over the world. This is why women are targeted in all the so-called religious orders, because they conquer you, they've conquered the world. How do you conquer a world? Master the Stargate. Who's the Stargate in the physicality? Woman. This is why all your symbols of the ancient world and this planet and some other planets, they have an image of Nunc or Isis, Astarte, Mary Magdalene, this type thing. That's woman, or Isis with Horus on her knee, or the image of the Constantinian order where they have Mary and Jesus, i.e. mother and son, ma son study, masonry, and they tell you it's devil worship, so you don't pay attention to how this world is really run, and they've been robbing you. Are we clear?
Clear.
And this whole politics is really conquerors of the Moors. That's who you are. It ain't got nothing to do with what you believe or what you don't believe. It has to do with who you are and what has happened to you and how you got to where you are right now. Tamara, now for them.
Now for them.
Non pro tunc.
That's right.
And when you walk before that magi, that magician, sorcerer, you understand? That's why he was moving them chess pieces around. So he moved his bishop around, and his bishop was the stenographer. You told her, put her back where she was.
Right.
Wrong move.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, because first he comes as a magistrate, then he comes as an ecclesiastical emissary.
Right.
And then clear the room. Why? So there's no ears, i.e. witnesses, for future testimony, testament. See how that all goes together?
I saw it.
Guess what? It's in play. The issue is most of our people, even when the game is played before them, they don't know what they're looking at. And they clear the room very often is because when you begin to exercise the birthright, you see their resistance teaches you. And if you respond to it affirmatively, you start learning because your mind starts opening up and you recognize that they're abusing you. Then you recognize in the process that this man ain't the law.
Exactly.
And it finally dawned on you that not only is he an imposter, he's not the law. What the hell you doing before him in the first damn place? Other than setting for the record because they have bonds out there in Lakers that they move against you in heritable bond estate. Not because you're submitting to that jurisdiction. It's because you recognize the play.
Absolutely.
Recognize that this is what I want to say too. Think about it. Recognize how many people who would look at you, as an example, as a newbie, who's had this information for years, been in the temples and mosques and everything for years, and don't even know these basics. And yet it's at the basics of what they should be doing. Look how many have declared the nationality and don't even know how broad it is. But your experience is part of the aspects of nationalization. The greatest thing could happen is you having that experience because now no one can tell you, you know for yourself. Not only do you know for yourself, you saw a lot of things that you're going to see more of as you review in your mind your experience. You're going to see it goes even deeper than that. And the fact that you have insight in the first place is why you put it in check. And then the fact that you understand birthright fundamentally. So logically, your responses and objections were logical and lawful. However, the resistance that you sensed shows you that they were conscious that they were violating you.
Well, I felt like he was
Get
ready.
right.
I felt as if
He was conscious that he was violating
right.
you. And the more you talk, the more he showed his face.
You know when you're playing chess and you want to hurry up and get your pawns out the way.
Yeah.
I felt that he wanted to hurry up and get the 10 people that was in front of me. Those was considered pawns. When he rushed them out of there, he had to hurry up and get the pawns out of the way. So
Yes.
now he wants to go to battle with me because that's when he really poked his peak. It's like a peacock.
And he didn't want them to share the experience because they would have learned, they would have probably, more than likely than not, started to wake up to what's going on and recognize that they were being played. So he needs them not to be in the womb.
Yeah, I saw like the peacock starting to like peak, like as if he was doing like a little dance and ready to.
He was.
And And so, but the way I stood in a position of where I'm not moving.
Yeah.
I'm not moving. I know what I'm here to do, and I know I don't need your permission to do it.
You're putting them on notice.
Exactly.
Yes.
It wasn't, well, I would like to do this. I want it on the record, but what's your objection for? He would never put on the record
Of course it would.
why his objection was, I want to play the game, but in my mind, I knew I was never defeated even walking in or walking out.
Right.
Because I'm coming in here I went in there on my will and I'm going to leave on my will. I knew that I was just placing it on the record.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he said, this is going to cause problems, I'm like, for whom?
Mm-hmm.
State for whom?
Yes, for the record.
For the record. Who's going to cause problems for him?
And then what is the problem that is causing?
I want to know who's going to cause problems.
Who, what, where, why, when, and
And
how.
then wars come from the Moorish sign, so you're aware of who we are. From the Moorish sign, simple, I said objection. What's the case? What's the stare decisis case pertaining to your judgment on this? Well, what I'm saying is we're going to have problems. For whom?
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep saying what I'm saying. You're not really saying anything because I know you're in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And I really shouldn't even be speaking to you. I should have just really handed my paperwork to the stenographer and been done with it. So I went in knowing this. But, I felt the sense of it get to a point to where we no longer must hide in the shadow of who we are.
Right.
And in order to be who we are, we must come out amongst them
That's right.
and be who we are.
Yeah.
And that's why I chose that route as well.
Yeah. Which I know, you really put them on notice. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like this. Even with people who may make the jurisdictional argument. It is not a matter of submitting to the jurisdiction, it's putting them on notice because they are operatively operating against our estates and functionally doing that. So you're really correcting them. However, the experience is a lesson, even though you already know, Tamara.
Yes.
How do you say self-proof? You knew he was happy to clown, but now you really noticing his shoes. They ain't Gucci. You be around bubble shoes and stuff. And it's really like that. It's sort of like, because when you're going through the experiences, some of these experiences, your mind is going to other people, conscious and unconscious, including family members who may think that you're dealing with a belief system or some clubism and not really understanding the politics. If they could only see for themselves, that's why that magician removed them people from the room.
Yes.
It is not unlike how the Ku Klux Klan Party, Democratic Party, doesn't worry about a person they call Negro, black colored vote, because they already got them in the pocket. They can kick them in their asses, kill their babies, poison their children, give them mercury in the vaccine, creating Down syndrome and everything, and knowing that they will vote for them because they're considered monkeys in the pocket. And that's how the Europeans talk among themselves. They don't worry about the so-called black vote because the black preacher that already sold them out, who got a skull and bones agreement, and these people keep thinking they're working for Jesus, and he worked for Rome. And they're so confident of our people's arrogant ignorance, not ignorance, arrogant ignorance, that they don't even worry about the so-called black vote.
No.
Clear.
Because it's dead already. So they got that. They can treat them any kind of way. They got that. So all they got to figure is the fringe people they need to BS and convince. And then because of the electoral college and the votes already being set, they already know that that the elections are rigged anyway, and that these so-called black votes don't really count. They're what you call sanctioning for the stock market. They don't even know it's sanctioning for the stock market. They think they're getting somebody representing them. And then you try to tell them about nationalization, they think you're trying to convert them against God and Jesus and Allah and type thing.
Well,
I mean, this is...
it's not funny. it's not funny because
It's tragic.
it's very tragic. I received a text, and the text said, said, want a job with the census, $22 per hour in the field of recruiting people to work for April census, maybe more in Delaware. I said, you got jokes, right? And the response was, no, let people know, $2,000 per person in the district. We are undercounted and losing money in AA areas.
Losing money since we never get it.
I said, really? I said, so you want me to go count Master Chattel? Hopefully he'll give them some more feed. I said, once a babe, always a babe. However, I'm El Supreme all day.
Yes.
I'm not doing that.
They don't even know that what they're doing is that every head count they get creates a new bond, because the nations of the earth are not buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and they need new bonds to back up their new duplicitous United States corporation company, faked as a country that's bankrupt again. So they need a head count of the stock of the cattle, which is French for chattel. And what better document they can get than for these people to what? Consent by signing census. Because they think U.S. citizen means the child of the mother government, etc., under protection. They don't know it means stock market. Because recently they try to monetize the birth certificates again, that they, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt had done in '33, and they wouldn't allow them to do it, meaning that they had fractionalized it so many times the world is not accepting it again, so they need new stock, even though new old stock. So, census. Now, the deal, they've given them nothing. They've given them promissory notes, against, which are debt notes, fiat not, and then they're going to lien that against your estate anyway, from you, and give you nothing. You know, now the deal of it is, that's that taffy that Charlie talked about. Some of these Moors will give up their birthright for a slice of bread. You know what I mean? And the real deal of it is when you pay attention to the dynamics of the operation, even what almost all of you and all of us are dealing with, it never dawns on you that you're sharecropping to live. What they've done, hypothecated your life, as an example. What are your big issues? Mortgage or rent, right? Phone bill, cable bill, car bill, insurance, and that car and insurance is not for you to enjoy, it's a tool for you to get back and forth to work for them, for the Federal Reserve notes, so that you can stay in the house and not on the street of your own land. Then medical and other costs, right? So what does it boil down to? And that's just the surface. That's just the surface. The reality is those collective costs, the average Joe can never meet it. So you will stay in debt for living. In other words, they're charging you for living. Forget what you call enjoying life. And most people don't recognize that that is their life, that you're serving the foreign U.S. corporate operatives just for you to live, meaning that it's illegal to even be poor. Because they'll abuse you if you don't contribute to the bowl. Now that's just, you can go further, and then when you go to get the private commercial paper, fiat, then they tax that, which means they're even taking your labor and then converting it into another debt on top of that debt. No different than, Sister Delia sent me a video this morning talking about the musical chairs, which we, a lot of times we're talking, and we've had a conversation about the musical chairs. And this is where the the car loan industry is hit a bubble, and you have, I forget the percentage, so I won't state it. I'll say it's a very, very, very high percentage of car loans that are default. And the average is people are 3 payments behind, so much that it doesn't even pay for them to come take the cars, because they can't even sell them anyway. And so what they're doing, their multiplicity of selling the loans to pension funds who are buying it with pension funds, which means people are not going to have pensions, because they're all dead, really. And then they got this thing where they get people to buy another car. They say, well, buy another car, but don't sell your car yet. And then as soon as you get another car, then you let them repossess the other car, and this is how they keep this thing rolling. And that's what's been going on, and what's happening, it's hitting peak zero. So you got musical chairs going on, and they're not telling the public, but we already know what's going on anyway. So the same thing they did with the alleged housing bubble, it's the same thing they're doing with the auto loans and with the school so-called education loans. All this stuff is coming to a head. So again, they need new stock to put bonds again, to create bonds again, there for the census. So people don't know that this is all related. They think census is citizen recount, but they don't know what citizen is. They really don't. Their concept is wrong.
That's the subject.
Yeah, so, and back to nationalization for the record. So now the problem that creates for them is that all the instruments that have been operating in this area, so people who don't understand, they think the United States is a country. The United States is a building around the corner. We could walk to it.
Right.
That's the United States.
Yeah.
And that's their headquarters. That's a corporation. So the people's mind is that capital is Washington. In their mind, the United States is Delaware, right? At Delaware. Or we're going not at Delaware Republic.
Right.
Is at DE. DE is not Delaware State Republic.
No.
Are we clear?
Clear.
So, and then you've got the zip code behind it. It's right the street here. They're broke.
Very.
So they need more stock. So they'll.
Oh, you should have seen them trying to sign those extortion papers. They was like,
Yeah, they were bonds.
Go ahead and put on this ankle bracelet.
Bonds.
I
The
was
same way when they're doing the dead pledge.
I was like, brothers. what
And
are
you'll see the
doing?
agents, when people so-called getting a mortgage, you'll see them standing right next to the person, flipping the page, saying sign. They don't know that they're bond at the bond, at the bond, at the bond. They ain't signed it. That's a linear contract. That's a violation of law. They don't even understand contract law. But I just want to throw that out at you. But the deal of it is, what you did, you started checking the magician. And so the people don't know that the magistrate is a magician. And he's a demon of the Ku Klux Klan party,
I don't realize the witch walk.
who overthrew the republic, which is you, which is the treaty. That's why he said this was going to be a problem. Why? Because to get him to cooperate is to enforce the Constitution and treaty. Now he's back in a subordinate position. In other words, he just said, what you did declare, you took the office from him. You disrobed them. Now, the point that I'm saying to you, and you can expand on your analysis, the people who they cleared the room of have no idea of the dynamics that's going on. And half of them, if they saw it, it would confuse them. However, it would get them to think, some of them. Some of them are so sweet that they wouldn't catch anything. They think that you're holding up because they got to go to lunch. So let me hurry up and serve the master so I can go to lunch. Or I can go to my second or third job. And you're there arguing, how can she sit up there and argue? A lot of them think that you're, oh, she got a nerve. You see the way she talked to him?
You disrespectful.
Yeah. But you knew. But his response was, even though you knew, his response was affirmation of what you knew.
Right.
And an expansion of affirmation on what you already knew. So he said, put them out of the room. All right, Happy the Clown, I'm taking my mask off. You know, then he take these eyebrows off and shit. Well, that's what, hey, took the wig off and all. Damn. Whoa. He was,
I know, a clown, yeah.
now, we're busy taking care of, you know, immediate issues on the thoughts. And I just want to say this and not linger on it, is that you're beginning to see this rabbit hole is deep.
That just began.
You know, you went down the rabbit hole, but then you start saying, you know how they talk a fork in the road type thing? Well, guess what? After that, it was 3 forks and what the? Well, damn. Hello? Hello? What the? Really? Good experience, think on it, and write about it.
I am.
Get names, do an article. Matter of fact, I know you're busy over there, but I think what you need to do is you need to get up here. Because those experiences, many people who don't really understand nationalization will teach them. And also, it'll limit the opportunists who have been blocking them for all of these decades, whether they come through mosque, temple, or synagogue, doesn't matter. If they get involved with any organization, they will be clear on what they should do, what they should not do, what they should accept, what they should not accept. And they would know and recognize immediately when they're being bullshitted, which is what a lot of these people in these different organizations are really concerned about. That's really what their concern is. That's really why a lot of them don't like Tarik.
Sure.
No, it's really the truth. But I'm not against them. I'm against them abusing my people.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And I'm against them having abused me. And I stepped off.
Right. Oh, yes.
Do you understand?
I feel that.
Well, that's what it is. You know, most people who step off, and then go back to being a servant, a slave. No, well,
oppressed,
I try to help others not to be injured. But don't confuse the activities of criminal operatives with the honor of the missionary work set up by honorable men and women years ago. That actually has been, the platforms have been corrupted. Don't confuse that with the mission. The mission is honorary. The mission is honorable. And a lot of times people start blaming the organization rather than recognizing that the administrators are corrupted, and they get mad at the organization when the organization is proper.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And then by not being organized in the organization, they actually weaken themselves, because like you say, they need the unity. And these platforms are actually there to build the political platform for them to act upon. That's why they have bylaws. But they get so busy repeating things, they're never paying attention that these bylaws have been violated by the leadership from day one. They were put in power to make law, then they tell people to draw, lead, and teach law. An immediate contradiction. But then not knowing what's going on, doesn't know how it really affects them. And when you went before that Magi straight, he demonstrated he literally was demonstrating functional birthright theft, and you were functionally putting him in check because you understand birthright. And what I'm suggesting is comments about some of the people that come from the temple is that he already recognized that they didn't even know what they had.
Right.
And he was getting over on them. How come not you? And you weren't having it. So he cleared the room.
Right. Step out for a moment.
Cleared the room. Go ahead, sis.
Is it on? So this upcoming case with Byron Allen and Comcast, is that what's trying to shut, what she just did down? That's gonna shut that down, right?
Make that very clear to these people.
They're gonna try to shut down what the whole experience she just went through for her name change.
And correction, really.
And her name change correction.
Yeah.
The Byron Allen Comcast staged court case
Mm-hmm.
is.
In the same nature.
Yes, it's to shut down what because it's gonna take it's gonna take us back in slavery where we won't even have the opportunity to even do this anymore.
Exactly. That's why.
If you're saying you're black. Yeah, I'm not, because.
Yes, but I'm just saying that's because the game is up and they have to create a new platform. But the problem that happened is that people collectively around the world are becoming conscious even though they're not on the mark of what's going on. The people around the world are becoming conscious enough to start challenging and rejecting the system even though they don't know how to do it. The fact that they're starting to resist kills the bonds. Now someone who understands this slaughters the bond. They don't have the time cycle to keep renewing these instrumentalities because now nations aren't buying them. See, it's like this. They can create all kind of straw instruments as long as someone is buying them. What's happening is that they have a feedback loop unto themselves, which means that now the snake is eating his own tail. See, this is what it's been. They've been promoting the United States Corporation Company, foreign jurisdiction, as a country for so many decades that the normal people actually think the United States is a country. And even when they have the data fact information that it's a private corporation, they're still mentally operating with the concept that this is the government country having authority over them, who they're paying taxes to keep governing over you in contradiction to themselves. The people still aren't clear, meaning they're still foggy.
Clear.
However, the little bit of progress of consciousness is still damaging the system because the world sees it and knows that these instruments that they've been getting from the U.S. corporation are imploding. See, the value of fiat is its acceptance, not its existence on its face. It's sort of like this. The problem that they're having is that their counterfeiting system that they've been operating against the world under what they call the petrodollar. But actually what it is the Federal Reserve private commercial paper notes of debt set up by persons who claim to be Jews who are not Jews, who are actually Ashkenazi, who have been actually controlling all the countries under the secret treaty of Verona. And it has nothing to do with belief systems like people keep saying Jew and Christianity and Islam. No, what you have is an order of demons. Fact. Not opinion, fact. And they've been controlling nations literally with their private commercial paper. And it's only because they've convinced so many people that they were getting paid with money.
Clear. Which
is gold, silver, and copper, your major alchemical metals of the moon, sun, and Venus. But you're also talking Jupiter, the bright and morning star, which is the real culture of the earth. So they've actually been killing your connection with nature. So we're not even talking about the traces of gold and silver and copper and zinc and magnesium that's actually in your body for your life form, which is really the moon culture that even governs your womb, even governs the fish to feed you. So now, we have the symbol of the fish. So symbol of justice, symbol of Jesus, Isis, the sun. Your very culture, you've been helping the alien, Ashkenazi, hybrid Europeans destroy your own culture in the name of religion, helping them to rob you, Job, of all your resources, and you thought you were dealing with spirituality. Thought you were getting paid. You ain't never been paid. And then you're going deeper and deeper in debt. Job. So your job is really, really Job in the Bible. Read the book of Job, because it's really operative. Problem. Although it's difficult for a lot of people to handle, and even though some of them haven't figured it out yet, nature has moved light in to such a degree that even the deniers can't deny it. So the priesthood who set this up know it's inevitable. So they're proactive, as they've always been. So they're trying to put the people back in the dark, although the dark is gone. They're trying to maintain the jurisdictional powers of the Piscean age. Now, politically, you can legislate all you want to, but nature doesn't listen to you. Unlike if you're still in the Piscean energy, you can still create all kinds of darknesses of belief systems and mystery systems, because it would work. You've got to understand how the real magistrate, which magicians, it is not only the knowledge of the herbs or foods, which is really the medicine. It is really the knowledge of what money actually is, distinguished from what people have been trained that it is. And money actually goes far deeper than the average person unit, energy package unit that we call personality, really know. As an example, not even knowing that when they carry silver coins, it's a healer. And wherever it touches, it kills bacteria. Did you know that? That's number one. And it's not only what's in your body. Yes, it's not only what's in your body. Do you understand the gold that's around your heart? So they're creating sicknesses by taking it from you. So we're thinking spending and buying and spending, and we're not even thinking that the alchemical metals of the planets are harmonic with your tonal vibrations and your health. We're thinking spendability, value from that perspective. The moon governs your womb. This is why, again, that they send you off with adjusting, not creating, adjusting the Egyptian calendar, and then saying it's Gregory's calendar. So now you give credit, then they shift it. So that you think that the new year is when they conquered the Moors, which is January the 1st. It wasn't complete conquering, but it was the fall of the Red House. Thus, the fall of the Red Sea people in the West. That's what it means. So the Alhambra, the fall of the Alhambra, which means the Red House, and the setting up of orders inside the secret societies called the Red House and the Blue House, etc. We deal with the constellations also, is symbolic of the conquering of the Red Sea, of the Mississippi and the Nile, and the exit point of the Red Sea people, the Sabian Berber bloodline, which is you, i.e. collectively the Moors. Get over it. It's what it is. Ain't got a damn thing to do with what you believe or what you don't believe. That's the real politics. Get over it. Grow up. When you put that magistrate, that magician in check, you disrobed him. And then he had, you know how I say, you know, the birds in the bush type thing? Better the one in the hand and trying to catch the two in the bush. Get them out the room, they're already captured. You done got out, and he's, you know, you were there, but you were not. So now we're dealing with more than what you call in personam jurisdiction. We're dealing more than subject matter jurisdiction and jurisdiction. So in personam, subject matter, You're knocking that out of the box. But that's the basis upon which the political system is built. Their de facto jurisdictional claim or position, i.e., having an office and exercising the sovereignty power in that office while not being lawfully in that office.
Right.
And you disrobe them
Full of life.
by being yourself and not allowing him to trick you into getting off your square.
No.
Principle is that you didn't even have to be mastered in it. You needed to know the basics. Although you know more than the basics, you stuck to the basics so he couldn't move you.
Yeah. And don't let them talk too fast. One thing I noticed is
Mike.
that. Where's Mike?
And then you can give it back in a minute. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One thing that, and I guess my teachings of knowledge in the school system that I went to was I was on a debate team.
Yeah.
So being on a debate team, I was taught that when you are in opposition with someone and having even a conversation, you should repeat what they said. So you're saying, so that way it's
Very clear.
it's clear. So if they
You put the ball back in his court.
if they object to well you know what I'm saying, no. So because I kept saying, so you're saying this, that, and that. So you're saying, so you're admitting. So are you saying that the United States do not have a treaty with Morocco? But what I'm saying is, no, so you're saying that is a known lesson, because if anyone look at any of the so-called little primaries of their corporation arguments of who will win the boardroom seat, you will see that method that they employ. They will restate the question again.
Exactly.
So that slows the person down for trying to get over on you. And actually they call that method the BESK method, B-E-S-K, means to describe, explain, state, and know your position. I yield the floor.
So what did you do? You claimed jurisdiction over your estate. So the name correction and change is, now this is where people need to understand what was really going on. And this is back to concept. What was happening is lawfully and legally referred to as reversion of estate. So now he's fired as the trustee. Point is that many people will look at what appears to be the surface of the documents, the paperwork, like Dr. Naila was saying. Do they really understand what that represents? You see? And that what the action actually represents. Meaning that by right of law, you don't need to do any of it.
Right.
But by right of process, what you've done is put a liability on them for the public record. They're liable. But you also spiritually put a liability on them, because now you expressed it in the ethers. Now all energies, seen and unseen, are responsible to that. Knowing that most people don't understand divine law, they've been getting away with it by many people thinking it and not having the courage to speak up.
Well, isn't that,
By not speaking up, it's an abandonment.
is that law of correspondence?
Yes, of course it is. Now this is the distinction, as we talked about before. Do people know the distinction between divine law, or what is called hermetic law, and legislation or ens legis? Although ens legis operations or civil law is a study of natural law brought to what you will call a moral and ethical level in written form for governing the physical realm or the third degree realm.
Clear.
But the principles are on 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, up to the 13th degree of the astral plane. Now you're getting into what we may call the Gnostic philosophies or true religion. Problems that people don't, in general, don't know that because they're not taught that. Although some people have pieces of it, whether they're studying certain aspects of Islam, Sunni, what they think is a sect, when actually it's a foundational philosophy of the collective Gnostic peoples, the culture itself, not just the maxims. But yet your legislative or what your fatwa principles are derivative, and thus, therefore, are universal, and thus are called the common law. Distinguished from Roman law, legislative law, the canon law, etc. And this is why when you look up common law, and like say in Bouvier's or Bell's or Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, different instruments of law, when you look up common law and you read through the semantics of it and just be blunt, and it's why does the common law trump the ens legis law? Because it is the foundation of the original ens legis operations of jurisprudence set up by the Sabians, i.e. the real, this is the label, Jews. The real Berbers. Civilization, i.e. mothers and fathers of civilization, the Canaanites and Moabites, get over it, i.e. Berbers. And even when there's misuses of knowledge, etc., talking about our Babylonian order and stuff like that, don't mean all was bad. Some bad things were done. Hammurabi, etc. Well, hey, come on. That's all your stuff. Get over it. It doesn't belong to the hybrid. Stop going into the culture, trying to look at the good and then denying some of the negatives that we've done. Own it.
That's right.
But the deal of it is what they've done is corrupted your law, taking credit for it, and you giving them credit for it, and then giving them jurisdiction. Then they're tricking you because they know that the masses have never been taught the truth of religion, and therefore they don't know that fine line between divine law and ens legis. However, the Magi does. So his game is to keep you moving wrong and then seizing advantage of your lack of knowledge of self. That's the chess. When you know the truth of your pedigree and bloodline, i.e. nationality, you already know when he's violating law that he's obligated. And then as soon as he makes a bad move, he says, no problem. Won't move that shit back. You're going to cause more problems for me. Yeah. You're supposed to be serving. Aren't you a public servant? Well, shouldn't you do this? Like, no, I don't like the edge of the cliff.
Right.
You stand over there. Well, yeah, it's going to cause problems. Well, you got all these dummies standing over there. I ain't standing over there because I'm dumb.
Right.
Well, they think that they're black, which means corpse. That's when Drawley said black according to science means death. It's not etymology he's talking, it's social science. Legal status, not lawful, legal status. And they've been playing them, they've been pawns, they've been sacrificed. And they ain't caught on. You caught on because you learned what birthright actually is. And so when the magistrate tried to play Superman, you said, that's my cape and shit. And you start talking shit and you pull out your kryptonite. I can stand it. That green crystal is called Venus, your green star. Oh, I was going to move over there. No, put her back over here. And it must be really understood, honestly, that while many people will look at it on the surface of legal process and how is he acting lawful, his thoughts are more deeper than that. It goes on multiple layers and levels. Because you're literally killing their economic return loop. Whether that's your intention or not, that's what's happening. His training as a Templar
They're residual.
or Knights Columbus. See, he's the collective arm for the Ku Klux Klan,
They're residual.
which is the grand protectors of the Constantine Creed, hiding behind the word Christianity. All of their bond system is based on fallen angels or fallen Moors, conquered Berbers, who they curl Negro, black, colored, and Indian.
Exactly.
No, that's the entire bond system. This is why they fill the POW camps with our people. Our people say, well, 90% of the people in the jails are people of color. Do they understand what they just said?
Exactly, no.
Humans who were made artificial. They were made into corpses so that the living can live off the dead. Black, according to science, means death. So you rose from the dead, Jesus. Justice. Now you see, with Gerald, those are codes that Gerald gave up. And you're learning them by action. But they don't mean what people thought they meant. They're thinking, what anthropomorphic man being. It's not really what he was talking about. He's talking about divine resurrection of the birthright. And where we're looking at the immediate problems that may be dealing with us as a single energy unit, he's looking at multi-layer bond systems that go back centuries. We're thinking surface. Not that you not thinking deeper than that, but his position is that. So it's sort of like our people may be looking at like you doing this. Oh, damn, she got him. He's looking at, the arms of Sheba, 8-arm type things. I'm just the destroyer. And people, you need to, people who are looking at that, it'll be difficult on the surface, but that's where they need to start looking. Because that's exactly what's happening. So he's working his space, but he was panicking. Because the operation is both physical and spiritual, even if it didn't appear to be that. Are we clear? And that's his view, regardless of what was displayed in that room. That's what's really happening. Take your experience and analyze what they're doing to Donald Trump symbolically. Although they're two sides of the same coin. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're still doing a play. They're still all acting. Them trying to set up Donald Trump, lying on him, and then getting people not to like him, and therefore is justified to do stuff to him, but what they're really symbolizing. What they're doing is going through a political reenactment of the overthrow of the Republic Order of 1871 and the assassination of Lincoln. Politically, they're doing exactly the same thing to Donald Trump. Now, I'm just telling you the absolute truth. That's not a support of Donald Trump. I'm just trying to get people to look at what's going on. Understand that these people think on multiple levels. They're not thinking shallow like the people who think that their voters are. The people looking at voters, looking at the parties, they're juvenile in their thought by design and don't recognize that they're juvenile. And all I'm saying to you is that you walked in there with that lawful proclamation, name, correction, and change, and affirmation of appellation, the appropriate persona, sui juris, sui heritus, and that's what he's looking at. So he's not looking at all the immediate bonds that they need to build buildings with, they need to fix street with. That is layered with allonges unseen that are around the world with the routing number of the Jesuit order, one of the 12, because all the 12 of the Franciscan Brotherhood's Jesuit orders, they have 12 bodies of the Jesuit order of the Franciscan Brotherhood, and they would be tagged for the unknowing as IRS regencies, or the 12 regency branches of the Federal Reserve. Different names, same thing. And so the Social Security, or what they call the CUSIC number, is a routing number for one of the Federal Reserve Bank systems of the Jesuit order of the Spanish Inquisition. That's what he's thinking. So we're thinking the immediate issue, he's thinking the entire political banking system and dominoes.
Check.
I'm just reminding you.
I think two people had questions, and then I'll go back to what I.
All right, give me my
I had a question about the bond system. Knowing that the United States Service Corporation, stationed in North America, placed the debt on the back of the Moors since 1861, I wanted to know, what does it look like for other nations when they dump the treasury bonds from the United States Service Corporation?
Yes.
And what's the process of dumping the bonds? Like
Now you say what it looks like. This is what it looks like.
how do they stay afloat if they're no longer purchasing the bonds?
Now we're talking. Let's look at it. They didn't anyway. See, the idea that they were staying afloat was a fiction. The leaders, most of them are puppets of the hybrid British, the hybrid Englishmen, the hybrid Europeans. When I say that, the hybrid Occidental, to be distinguished from, say, the Picts and the Dubs, i.e. the real Moors, the real people of Northwest Africa, because Europe was truthfully and originally a northern part of Africa. So when you're talking about Sicily, Portugal, Al-Andalusia, which they call Spain, it's part of Africa. All right, with the takeover, so you have the hybrid, sometimes referred to as, some Africans refer to them as rape babies. Some refer to them as the hybrid. But basically, that's what you have. You have the Vandal tribes, or some of what you would call the Albion. Just like, for instance, when the Moors ruled, the area that we ceded to the Occidentals, we call that area Albion. Today, that area is called England. So,
Clear.
yeah. So I'm making the distinction for truth, for the sake of truth. Because a lot of times when we use, Europe or European loosely, there's an automatic assumption that they're talking about the Paleolith hybrid.
Clear.
So the Paleolithic man is the hybrid, distinguished from the human original Aboriginal Berber peoples that you refer to as Moors, Africans, Asiatic Africans. Then you have your genetic mutation rejects. Right, wrong, or indifferent is not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the reality of the truth of our history. Very often among in the Atlantis areas of the lower part of southwestern Mexico, Asia, Africa, that you call now South America, and in different parts of Asia Sol or South Asia that you call Africa today, the albinos were banned, meaning that if they had albino children, they were referred to, because everything in nature has carbon, or the nature of life in this universe. It's not only a conductor, it's the source of life. And so when the albino gene, or the recessive, manifested, they were considered, with many Asiatics, that they had no soul. And so they would ban them. Also, some of them were used in the experiments with Yakub in Mexico. You know, and this is what you call the Patagonian experiments, and why they don't talk about, you know, with the nigger problem, when they talk about the scientific complexes that they let grow over in the Yucatan, they did tear them down, but you don't see them talking. When you talk geography and you talk anthropology, you do not see them discussing those scientific complexes in the Yucatan that they let grow over in the jungles. Because that's where many of those hybrid experiments were taking place with the Moors along the Amazon, you know, or a point that I want to make to you. And do this, Stamp. You know, like when they make those movies, the old movies about Tarzan,
Yeah.
and they talk about Tarzan in Africa and the Amazon, and then they have natives running around type thing. And most people, in their minds, when they talk about the Amazon River, based on what they were correct, but not the way they thought they were correct.
Right.
Well, the Amazon, you see all these Africans running around, yeah, but that's South America. Their mind is that's the other side of the river.
Right.
That's South America.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
That's a Rio Negro, where it comes into what they call the Black Waters, come at Manaus and merge in the Amazon, near Colombia and Brazil. And then over to your right, then you got Patagonia, that's now called Argentina. And that's where many of the hybrid experiments were completed, technically, by more scientists, predominantly women, not Dr. Yakub. He's given credit in history, you know, just like a figure, just like they give you a figure of George Washington as an example, when all the conversion of the estates was not necessarily him himself, but it's an era of operations of hybrid Europeans doing things, and so they use George Washington as a symbol of a period of time of conversion of a state. This is also why it's necessary for them politically to say that he was the first president when he was the ninth. Do you understand? Different things like that to set you off.
Right.
And even the adjustment of the Egyptian calendar. And so the nature of cosmology, according to the position of the sun and the planet Earth, because the Earth culture is cosmology. So in this side of the world, Northwest and Southwest Africa on this side of the world, where Atlantia, you know, where it sank, and then we have the great shift. The new year is the vernal equinox on March the 21st. So we know that March is actually the first moon cycle in the cycle of what we call the calendar year. You know, so the declaration by the hybrids that it is January 1st has to do with the fall of the Alhambra. And you must be clear, that's why the Mummers Parade is celebrated at Philadelphia, which is Phoenicians. So the conquest of the Mandi and the Phoenicians on Philadelphia, and so they say, so Rome conquered the Moors, and this is why they call Washington District of Columbia. But the Capitolium is, and still is, Philadelphia. Capital really is still there. The deal of it is, are you awakened? You know, and this is, and so with the mystery system of the priesthood, this is why they do the obelisk, right? And they put it on a borderline, and they take some land from the Virgin Mary. So Virginia and Mary's land, Virgin Mary, and they set the obelisk there in the 10-mile square. So the 10 fingers of man, that's when you do manual. So manuals, all manuals, manumission, etc. Manumission. The transference of the deeds, actions is also deeds of men, of the claims of the lives of the conquered ones under the 14th Amendment. And thus the courts and the closing of the Bureau of Refugees in our own land, Martin Luther King, my people are refugees in their own land, 33 degree Mason. He'd been to the mountaintop, Great Seal. You gotta understand, all these codes, stuff is said around you every day. If you don't know the history, it doesn't dawn on you what's being said to your actual face. But then when they get you to agree, that sanctions them divinely, because now the karma reflects on you and not on them, because you sanctioned them. That's why they ask you to sign things. That's why they say, we want to make sure that you have allegiance to the United States, U.S. citizen type thing, and to make you think that you're saying that I'm my mother's child in this government order, and therefore I honor her. That's what the implied is, when actually you're agreeing to be stock.
Clear.
And then they can renew their operations. Now, back to the point. The bonds that were set up after the Commercial Mercenary War of 1861, and then affirmed in the political platform organically with 1871, where they retained the seats absent of the legitimate authority. In other words, you're dealing de facto. In other words, from here on, you're dealing fraud. Doesn't matter.
Understood.
Now, they've been selling them bonds to the nations of the earth, and under their secret treaty of Verona, overthrowing the republics and setting up these puppets around the world. So the people keep assuming that these other nation states, that these people who are governing are the people aboriginal of the land. They were not. 99% of them are puppets installed by Britain. All right? And we're not talking about the true British Moors. We're talking about the hybrids. Occidentals, are we clear?
Clear.
Whigamores. In other words, Europeans putting on wigs pretending to be Moors, called Whigamores. Are we clear? That's the Whigamore party?
It's the Whigamore party.
Now you got it. Also referred to as the Whigs. And so the power of their operations solidifies in the 1800s in different orders. That's why you have the Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan Oath, 1854, 1863, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Illinois, the Trading Triangle, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, that ancient trading triangle. And of course, that's what your Mummers Parade is about. And this is why they would darken their faces. Even when they talk about the Boston Tea Party, when they darkened their faces and threw the tea over because of the taxes and said that the Aboriginals or that the indigenous people did it. And then they're writing the history that they were pretending to be Indians.
I remember that.
They're pretending to be you.
In school.
Yeah,
I remember that.
but I'm putting things in context, because if people would pay attention to details, it tells them a lot if they know what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But most people don't know what they're looking at.
They didn't tell us about the blackface in school, but I remember that.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, they
Boston
did it.
Tea Party.
They hadn't been getting the mic.
I apologize.
And as a matter of fact, this last one was free, which they hadn't done since the Wilson Good administration. They did the Mummers Parade in what they would call blackface.
You talked about that before.
Oh yeah.
But I do remember the Boston Tea Party in school. Western Civilization was a class in high school, my 10th grade year. I do remember learning about that. But the specific piece about the blackface was not taught. I don't remember that.
Mm-hmm. And they call it that, although that's just symbolic of the conquerors and the Moors. That's why so they do the Mummers Parade. They would assemble at 6th and Moore Street, and then go West Young Man, Horace Greeley, turn 90 degrees, the square, and go North Gate, North Star, etc., Polaris, etc., and then 23.5 degrees. They put Billy Penn on the top of the parapet of City Hall, which is designed in Ionic and Moorish architecture, and it's designed exactly like a mosque. And then it has your 4 gates, and then it has your zodiac ball right in the middle of the courtyard, and people walk from the east, from the north, from the east, from the west, and from the south, the news, across that law, and then they have the the cornerstone in an open pit grave with a brass rail just underneath the north parapet. And of course, they got the Masonic Lodge right there on the corner where they end the parade. And then they have duplication of Moorish temples in that lodge, exact duplicates of Moorish temples, Ionic temples, and all. And when you're talking Ionic, you're still talking Moorish. You're simply talking about the Moors of the Iberian Peninsula, i.e., the cribbed off areas of North Africa that they now call Europe under Queen Europa. Get over it. And this is what this is all about. And it's keeping, the issue for them is to keep you asleep of this. That's called the Great Masonic Secret.
Understood.
That's basically, simply what, that's why all Masons, Europeans and Asiatics, all wear the Moorish fez. And then pretend they don't know who the Moors are. Including some of your so-called black leader guys. And most of them who have fezes, they try to hide the pictures. You know, the different organizations they belong to, where their leaders at one time or another were taking pictures with their fezes on, and you'll see them always hide them pictures. That's why they do it. Meaning that everybody knows what's up. The only ones that haven't known what's up is the believers who've been paying the bills and who've been taken advantage of. Not just by the Albion Europeans, but also by Skull and Bones, kickback, 501c3, protectorants, operatives known as overseers, put amongst them and chosen as their leaders. Now with the Skull and Bones members and the Boule members, etc., of these different orders that work for Rome, including these people who are members, subdivisional members of the Roman Curia, who run these different nation states, have been doing things in the names of the people, but have never served the people. Problem is that their bonds that they've had in their treasuries are dead, and when the nations stop accepting them, that their economic system falls. Not that they don't have money, they have instrumentality or private commercial paper that's no longer being honored. Because there never was money. It was always dead.
Right.
Always from the beginning. So the concept that people have is that just because it was accepted as money, never made it money. It just meant that the demos system that they had set up around the world under the Jesuit order was in operation and in power, and controlled mostly by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, under the Jesuit order of the demon platform of the Democratic Party. Doesn't mean that the persons claiming to be Republicans weren't corrupt too, because they were corrupt too.
Awesome.
Do you understand? However, that's what's been going on. The deal of it is for the masses not to be aware of that being the function. So as an example, say like a Gaddafi.
Yes.
Around the time when the hybrid Germans went to New York, sent diplomats to New York to check on their gold, and discovered that their gold had been melted down because all these bars had no numerical marks on them, and that they sent them home, etc. And then a few days later, these buildings mysteriously fell with somebody throwing box cutter knives against dartboards in a cave in Afghanistan, made these buildings fall. And that's what people like. They know it's fiction, but they want to accept this because they know
Accept
the
the
real. Yeah. And the deal of it is, so now Germany's gold is disappearing. So they went and stole Gaddafi's gold and murdered him. And this is including the fact that Gaddafi was setting up a system, a satellite system for Africa that would have bypassed the Google satellites and all of these satellites set up by Rome, as well as setting up back to the dinar system, i.e. with gold, African gold, and then controlling the monetary system among Africans. So they got rid of Gaddafi, even though part of that's a cover-up too. It's a whole other story to that.
Absolutely.
And then stole his gold to give Germany back some of their gold. That's what really happened there. Oh, yes.
Understood.
It's multiple levels. of the assassination of Gaddafi, because they needed to. Because remember, Germany is their #1 ally, so they had already stolen Germany's gold, and this is why they never have any accounting for the alleged gold in Fort Knox.
Yeah.
Because they've been stealing it and selling it and sending it to Ashkenazis in Israel and to the Vatican. Now that's the truth.
Clear.
Because the real deal, the United States corporation really is run by Israel. That's the truth. That's why they make all these laws that don't say anything, or they'll start closing your accounts and stuff.
Understood.
I mean, that to tell the truth is called speaking against them. And so the people think that the United States government is a nation, when the United States government is actually a political platform run from Fleet Street and then run to Israel, the Ashkenazis, into the Vatican. And they're all one and the same. Now that's just simply the truth. Now get over it. And all of it, and you're the target. And see, they've already robbed us, now they've been robbing everybody else. Now the rest of the world, this is what it's been. Anyone who didn't submit, that's what these wars are all about.
Clear.
They go force them to accept the bond. This is also with Iraq, which is really part of Persia. So when you look at Iran, Iraq, don't look at Iran, Iraq, say Persia. So you got to get it in your mind what's really up. Just like when you look at these people here, don't say black and Indians, Moors, then things start coming clear.
Clear. Understood.
It's not that we weren't called these things. Do you understand?
Yes.
So when you look at Iraq, Iran, Syria, Persia.
Check. Understood.
Yes. And anyone who didn't submit, the Roman soldiers were sent. That's the U.S. Army. It is a mercenary force, a private army of the UN, which belongs to the Rothschilds. And then you're looking at April Fools. So you're looking at when they burnt them Moorish women and children that they were supposed to let go free on the ships after the fall of the Alhambra and the Treaty of Grenada. And then they burnt the ships and they called it April Fool. And so now, April 15th, that's why you collect the taxes or the tribute for the fake queen monarchy of England under the secret Treaty of Verona. That's why the tax day minimum, the late day is April 15th.
Never knew that.
Oh, none of this stuff is secret. It's just that we're so busy trying to survive that we don't pay attention to things. And then by the people not knowing that they're wars, they keep thinking this is some other people, or think it's some religion, not knowing it, they talking about themselves.
Understand and understood.
And this is why when you look at the Moors here in North America particularly, you can see in the same family, same exact family, the mother's a Negro, the father's black, the uncle's a coon, the cousin's a nigger, the daughter's a person of color. No, and they all think that is divinely real.
That's true. That's true. It is. That's true.
And then that paradigm is promoted by their leader guys who secretly Masons and Boule and got a Moorish fest and been taken to the mountaintop and got a certificate after 32 degrees that says Assalamu alaikum, and they have a holy name. And they are referred to some loosely as Masons. Yeah, and it's true. That's all your club members, all them guys. That's why they don't like Drew Ali, because he exposed it all. You'll see them talk about all these so-called black leaders, but you don't see them talking about no Drew Ali.
Nope.
He pulled the wool off of all of them. That's why not.
I found that to be quite
Obvious, for
interesting.
one.
Well, in the new documentary that is sweeping the airways with Who Killed Malcolm X,
where they talked about Prophet, Muhammad,
Mhm.
in the history of Prophet Muhammad, but then they said he was, sorry.
I'm sorry, you know, there's a documentary that's sweeping the airways on Netflix called Who Killed or Who Assassinated Malcolm X. It's a really great documentary, looking at it from a research type eye. You are able to see that our people, we have some really sick people amongst us
Absolutely.
that are gatekeepers for
Yes.
corruption. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is when they talked about Prophet Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, when they spoke of him, they slightly briefly scaled over his history, and they did state that he had, the guy that he had over Temple 25 in Newark, New Jersey, they knew each other from jail. So they had a history of knowing each other, but there was never stated what they were in jail for before.
Mhm.
And it was never brought up of, they say, the teachings of Prophet Elijah Muhammad. Okay, so they never stated, okay, well, who taught him? Where did his teachings come from? I'm not talking about Farad Muhammad. Let's go a little bit further back than that, when his name was Elijah Pauperis. So I thought it was quite interesting that they never brought the connection up between the Moorish science and Elijah Poole, his entire journey to where he was at now.
Well,
It's like
absolutely.
that part, like if you open that Pandora box down, you know you're gonna start talking about Prophet
Well,
Noble Drew Ali, and it's really gonna get it's gonna be like
I
a
saw that.
15 sub
For those
series.
who, for the people, for the audience sake, it is not a disrespect for the good that the addict Elijah did. Because a lot of times people will argue, well, that's a disrespect of him correcting his nomenclature. You know, that's only for information purposes. You know, that's before he takes, because he also has what you call a holy name too, which they do not use. He's also an Abdul, just like Raleigh is. You know, and a lot of people don't know that. And so they think that there's an insult on calling Elijah Poole thing, but that's not it.
No.
It's because when they enter into the temple, they maintain the straw with the hyphen, and then upon development, then they can take on their holy name, etc. Now, if you go into to congressional records, you go into congressional records, and for those who want to do research on the history of American religions, and in the congressional records, they'll tell you the relationship that the Nation of Islam is a break-off from the Moorish movement. It was first the Temple of Allah, then the Temple of Islam, right? Then Nation of Islam. You know, and a lot of the disciplines, a lot of the structure of discipline, business, etc., was maintained by Elijah Muhammad. A lot of times when people are putting in negative, they overlook the good that he's done, the order, a lot of the positive order and structure that he maintained. And credit is due where credit is due.
Absolutely.
Now, the fact that people came around, and they also infiltrated them too. And also, this is why, for a time, he was running for his life.
Right.
Too, you know. So, and a lot of times he would go out to the west of Arizona also because they had respiratory problems and stuff like that. But a lot of times they would say that the land was going out there, but the real deal is that he was running for his life too, because the movement was infiltrated by J. Edgar Hoover the same way they did with the Moorish Science Temple. You know, so the deal of it is a lot of times people keep trying to pit them against each other, to create that division, when actually Elijah Muhammad preserved a lot of the structure of culture and order, and a lot of people discipline, a lot of securing of the family, respect for family, was maintained in the Temple of Islam, which becomes Muhammad's mosque, and then later becomes the Nation of Islam. So just because in all orders you have a few, bad apples, do not condemn the order for the sake of a few bad apples, because people like to do that.
Right.
However, what you will see in the history of American religions, which they will give you the record and tell you even how it broke down, how it came out of that order. And then, of course, a lot of people get sensitive because they don't want the people to know the history of Farad, because there's actually two of them. One was a drug dealer and was arrested multiple times for selling drugs in our community. And then they have another one that they represent as Allah in person. So for people to have to answer to that, they don't want to get into that.
Right.
And then they don't, because then they have to start telling the real history of the connection, and then it kind of loses balance for people, because people need an image. Our people being fed dogma for so many generations, they're uncomfortable if you don't have them in this image mentality. And so they try to protect the image. But in the process, they actually do damage, because when people do find out the truth, like Malcolm, then it kind of puts them in an awkward position. Then they murder them to try to protect images, and then they spoil everything.
Absolutely.
That's why nobody wants to talk about that. And that's one of the reasons they don't want to talk about that. You know what I mean? So, and my position is, for a few people who sold out, don't blame the Elijah Muhammad for what they've done. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because he did a lot of
No,
work.
absolutely, no. My point was that,
No, I'm not you. I'm talking about people in
Yes.
general, because remember, I experienced a lot of those things over the years, and I know a lot of celebrities.
no, my point is that the connection is not made.
Yes.
When they say Elijah's teaching,
I knew exactly
their
what you were
point is
saying.
not made with Prophet Noble Ali.
Yeah, they avoid that.
They will continue to keep Prophet Noble
Avoid
Ali covered up.
They avoid that,
And
because
it's like, okay, if you open that Pandora's box, we are really in trouble.
then, because then you get into persons inside the Nation of Islam who had and who have nationality cards. Do you understand? Then they've been calling, they may have to justify why the X if you know yourself. Things like that. Do you understand?
Understood.
So it can get quite uncomfortable, and I understand that. But they have to recognize that the Lamb, which is also what we call Elijah Muhammad the Messenger, said, the supreme wisdom will be handed you later. So it's not that he held things back. The people had to be evolved. And remember, before they were evolved, they got rid of him. So people still think, some people who don't understand it think that he was holding back when it was not that. They were not yet addicts. So a lot of times people keep forgetting that he said the supreme wisdom will be handed you later, which is telling you you don't have all of the degrees. Then he also I think Actual Facts number 6, I think it's number 6. I go check my records. And he said, where he says, what is a Muslim? What is a Mason? That's the question. And the answer is, a Mason is a Muslim son. He didn't say a Muslim son. He said Muslim son. Now, in that, he just gave an added lesson for those who will pay attention. That's a signal, because remember, most of the members call themselves Muslims, not that they're not Muslim.
Right.
But why would he give them, in the Actual Facts, what is a Mason? He's making a tie. A Mason is a Muslim son. Now he's sending you back to the Renaissance. And he's sending you back to the politics that we're talking about. And if you do the research, you liberate yourself and you see that it's the conquest of the Moors. Then you'll see why they hide the picture of Elijah Muhammad with his fez on. Because they have to answer to that.
Understood.
I mean, do you comprehend?
Understood.
You know, and then people who have been so dedicated, some of them can think they've been cheated. It's not that they've been cheated, it's that they didn't evolve. And it doesn't mean that they didn't have a lot already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was,
You know, and it's just like a man's life is limited. And the nation's work that has to be done and the overthrow of this nation has been taking place in a couple of centuries. So you can't do necessarily in a lifetime what is the responsibility of all to do.
right, absolutely.
So even the concept for a non-thinking person that Islam, which is both a science and a creed, is not a nation.
Right.
And then you can't talk nationhood without teaching nationality. Yet they don't teach nationality.
Right.
But if you're not thinking, it doesn't dawn on you. But if you're thinking, it dawns on you. Then if you start asking questions, some of the leadership gets uncomfortable because now they got an answer to the real history. And of course, they're not going to say we're lying. That's why if you really pay attention to a lot of the leaders in the Nation of Islam over a period of years, you can find a lot of documentation where they come out and tell the people that they're Moors. Farrakhan has told the people multiple times that they're Moors. He's never hid it. They just don't consistently tell it.
Yeah.
They're not consistent with it because they're protecting the organization because they know people are fickle. People are fickle. And it's unfortunate, but it's just
Unforgiving.
it's well, kind of yes, including the difficulty, with Il Malik, where that French Muslim, European, hybrid European, schooled him, when he that the concept that the many Muslims have that Maghreb is evening salat. Now I can take you to an older dictionary and show you the Maghreb is Morocco, the most extreme west. What does that tell you? That's geography. Morocco, the most extreme west. That ain't prayer, that's land. So they're telling you that the Western Hemisphere is Morocco. You see the point? So they didn't hide it, did they? They just kind of veiled it.
The question that I have is dealing with what you were just now talking about. It's somewhat of a hypothetical because I've been thinking about it, but I wanted to know if the Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution for the people, which reads
establishes a federal Republican form of government for all states in the Union. So all of the nation states in the operations of the Republic order must have a Republican form of government. So you can see by the law of the land, there is no such thing as democracy as a political platform.
Clear.
Yeah.
I am more so wondering about placement because
say it again.
Placement because
all right.
it's would it mean that Armenians go back to Armenia, Polish go back to Poland, Ireland go back to Ireland? Is there a who makes the authority to make that decision? If it is that it's restored.
Now this is the problem. This would be dealing with nationalization.
Right.
Now and this is the problem that they're actually having right now, because the Europeans have been traditionally, so we're going to end in 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
So traditionally, and particularly in recent years, mostly attacking the indigenous Dravidians some of the Dravidian tribes that we call Mexico. Are we clear?
Clear.
So now they're making the argument of political jurisdiction under nationhood. Are we clear? However, on the long term, it makes a problem for them because no one's questioning them. But yet, on the international scene, for them to keep making that an issue and enforcing that, they're going to have to tell who is who. And then what you're going to find out, and this is really uncomfortable for them, that they ain't, these Europeans here, they ain't English and German and all this stuff either.
Ah.
We are. You know, see, this is the real, now you're really getting into the real history. All of those persons of the Aboriginal, see, what they haven't been telling people is that the Aboriginal people of Europe are Berber gypsies. Keep telling you, all of these people are Berbers. They're all Moors. This is why, like, when you really look at some of the traditions, even though some of them forgot their origins, they can all be traced back to Africa. Going all the way up Asia. The Europeans are, unfortunately, the hybrid Europeans. The more you dig into this, the more it becomes obvious that they're hybrids, that they're not aboriginal to the planet. They're not aboriginal to anything. Now you got to answer. So the way they can do it, they'll say they're a modern man. So what do you say, a modern man? What does that really mean? Right. What it really means is you have no ancient history on this planet.
Of antiquity.
Now, so where did you come from?
Absolutely.
Why are you not aboriginal even to Europe? Because they're not even technically Europeans either. Because they're hybrids. So now, what are you going to go to Charles Darwin and talk about the monkeys? Well, yes, but now you got to talk about the Jacobian experiments of Central America, the real history, and why the Vandals or the hybrid Europeans, Romans, have no real ancient history, and they've been killing you off and writing themselves into history by stealing your identity, which is the operations of the Inquisition. Attack on nature and nature's people. That's the real operations that people who don't understand have been calling racism and prejudice. No, it's Inquisition operations, identity theft. Now, we've been over these generations trying to make a place for them, which is why we ceded that area to them. We ceded that area to them. Are we clear?
Clear.
We ceded that area to them. So that's, so go home to your older dictionary.
Yeah.
And look at England, and then go down into the linear entry, and you'll see Albion. And so Europa is actually a Moabite Canaanite queen. You can say queen, more or less empress.
Understood.
Potentess. And under her authority is why they were honored with the name European. So everything that's given to them is given to them. This is where the dynamics of 27 or 25, pardon me, of genetic code, i.e. Septuaginta, chapter 25, Rebecca, the theft of the birthright, the bowl of red pottage. That's what you have. That's what it really is. So you have you have the hybrid trying to kill off the firstborn or the real people. That's coded what that really is talking about. Anyway, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. But go ahead, Dr. Nadia.
No, I just want to have an announcement.
Go ahead.
When you finish.
Give the mic.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out and those who have given us some support online. But tomorrow, which is February the 22nd, February, as you know, is Heart Health Month. And we're pleased to have Brother David Levi Bay, who is a certified master herbalist. He's going to be here The exchange of energy is only 10 notes. If you are dealing with any type of physical ailments or know of anyone who may have diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, anxiety, the list goes on and on. The brother is amazing. He's phenomenal. When I met him, I was on a walker, just coming out of, my situation, just coming out of the hospital. And he got me started on, my healing process with regard from a natural standpoint. And he's going to be here tomorrow, 2 to 6 p.m. It's only 10 notes. We want you to come out, bring yourself, bring someone else. I know the flyer says that you can pay on Eventbrite, but you can pay at the door. Is that right, Mr. Chandler? We are trying our best to, here at House of Reawakening Minds, to bring you more and more variety, because while we need, we definitely need to work on our nationality, birthright, history, and all that. We need to work on our now, and we need to work on our health, because none of that means anything.
That's also nationality.
Right. None of it means anything if you don't have your health. I don't care how much gold and silver you amass outwardly. If your internal gold and silver is out of whack, then you may be off track and you may be out of here quicker than you need to be. Brother Dave is a naturopath. He's certified. You will be able to get a mini assessment or basic assessment tomorrow, which will save you probably, many notes if you went to his practice in Philadelphia to see him. So you can come tomorrow for just 10 notes, and he's excellent at muscle testing and so forth, and iridology. He normally has the herbs right here that after he assesses you, it can tell you what you need, and not only that, muscle testing will tell you in what dosage you need, because everybody is different. So that's tomorrow at 2 p.m., 2 to 6. Like I said, we're doing our best to expand what our offering here, and we need you to support us. We just definitely need you to support us. I mean, we have another announcement we'll make about that. Yeah, okay. Might as well do it right now. With regard to our event in March 21st and 20th and 21st, because of very poor ticket sales, we've made an executive decision to not have the event, at least not in the manner in which we had. Many of you did not respond, and those who have purchased their tickets will be refunding your funds. We've transferred funds back into our PayPal so that we can do that. It takes about 5 days, and we will be refunding your funds. We were doing it as a fundraiser. It was called More Science, Metaphysics, and Me. Of course, I'll be turning 65 during that week that we were having the event. We will have a Friday event here. More Summit. We will have the summit on Friday and Tamara insists that we should still have celebration.
I love a good party.
She says she loves a good party. So, my heart was broken because, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I will say there's a scripture in the Bible that says, now I have to sometimes refer to it, said I was wounded in the house of my friend. And sometimes people do things and they conflict with what you do, and they know that what they're doing will cause injury to what you're doing, and in this case, we've come up against that, and I wish them well in the thing that they're doing, but I want it to be made public that I'm not happy, because I realize the agenda that was at hand, but I'm not going to be negative about it, because I don't want to pull negativity in on myself. But I will say that those of you who support us, we are very, very, very overly appreciative of what you do. Those who come out, even if you get here late, you come. Those who log on and stick with us. Those who complain, I guess you need complainers, but with regard to the sound, we realize that we are under attack when it comes to Facebook, but we do have a YouTube page. So while everybody was screaming, yelling and upset over the sound quality of Facebook, the same speaker system and sound system is recording to YouTube, and that's not happening because Facebook is sabotaging us. But we'll keep the venue going, but you can always go to YouTube and be on YouTube Live and then you don't have to complain on Facebook. There are some other changes coming, I will say that.
Friday will be 25 notes a person.
Right, Friday, she wanted me to let you all know that, this Friday will be not this Friday, the 20th of March will be 25 notes instead of the normal 10, because we are gonna do the summit and, a dinner celebration. If you all care or want to come and celebrate my 65th, then please, that's not for me. That's because we still have speakers, some of which we are retaining, and we still have to pay. Notice that a couple thousand notes has already been expended that may not get back. That came mainly out of my pocket.
It will not be live.
Yeah, it won't be live.
It will be on Patreon.
And it will be on Patreon, just the summit, and it'll be 10 notes for those who watch it on Patreon, but you can't celebrate if you're not here. I think over, I'm gonna toot my own horn right now. I don't care who you talk about me later on, but I've been keeping this venue going, and with the help of others like my dear sister Tamara, who's been here for the last 2 years, and she told me 3 months, I guess, 4 months right now, but for 9 years, almost 9 years I've been doing this, and I don't ask anybody for anything for me. Everything that I've done, and Grand Sheik knows it, and Cameron knows it, is to keep a venue going for you. It has nothing to do with me, because I'm retired, and I could care less, to be honest, as a retiree, whether I'm down here, but I do care. I could be somewhere kicking up my feet and relaxing, because there's 2 dates in the month that I like. The 1st and the 3rd Wednesday, and it's like clockwork for me. But when you do this and you don't feel as if people really appreciate it, people take it for granted, oh, they're gonna be there, or I can just look at it, like we've said to you, we've got complaints about the equipment and the quality of the video and the thing. We purchased a camera, I took it out of my own pocket, I'm just say it, and got that Vivo camera over there. And I'm grateful for people, like Brother Jabril. I'm gonna call him out because this brother has been such I don't like to say blessing because I know what blessing is, but you know what the equivalent of what we mean when we say that? Somebody who, we needed an air conditioner. We still gotta get it up, but he's in Minnesota. We got a brand new air conditioner. We needed an iPad to go to do the Mevo stuff. The Mevo camera, the iPad was purchased. I talked to him about a new mic system, a small mic system, and he's just recently sent the funds to get a mic that might help us get a little better quality. But we also know we're still being sabotaged by Facebook. So it's people like him, and and Brother Morpheus Bay, and some of you out there, others that I'll mess up if I try to call everybody's name, but I'm talking about the ones that go deep, and they don't have to. And I said, when the guy, and I'll call him out, Pauperis, said all that crap to me in a message the other day about how shitty our quality is. If we got so many squalors but we put out a shitty product, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
I said, well, if you all would just give $1, maybe we could buy some better equipment. If you watch the video, what's $1? So what we're gonna be doing, moving forward, we're gonna be switching over to Patreon. I might as well just say it. We're gonna switch over to Patreon, and we're gonna see who wants to see it now. If you have to pay a little bit of something, eventually maybe we'll be able to get better equipment. Those of you who come, we're not changing the price for coming. It's gonna be what it is. But I look out and I see 1, 2, 3, 4 people, 5, 6. I remember when this place was wall to wall packed, standing room only. What happened? Some people get a little bit of what they think is they got it, and they run off, and then they want to do their own thing, which is not a problem. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
That's
not unity.
She said yes it is. But when I say not a problem, I'm saying it from the standpoint of a former pastor that woke up and realized that people, once they grow, they go. But most of these people hadn't grown. They just get a little bit of something more. They just came in because they needed a remedy. They needed they wanted their paperwork or something, or they thought they could get some help out with a traffic ticket or child support, and they were on their way. But then there's some of you that really care about nation building and uplifting fallen humanity, and we appreciate you. I appreciate you. This is not a swan song, I am not giving up, but I'm telling you, this week, I was damn near ready.
I thought I was gonna have to slap him.
Seriously, it hurt my heart because I knew, came out of my pocket because I was like, oh, they'll come because Grant, she could tell you how much this building, it needs work.
Yeah, well.
It's cool up here, but your foundation has to be strong. You know what I'm saying? You come up here and it looks good up here, but we have an issue with the foundation that has to be addressed. So some of you out there probably thought, they just trying to get some funds for what? Absolutely not. This is not a venue for anybody's pockets to be lined.
Sure.
Because tonight we took in 40 notes. What we gonna line with that? And thank you for those, and we took in about another 60 online. Thank you. So about 100 notes.
Absolutely.
So I'm just gonna,
We know what you mean.
I'm very transparent.
We know what you mean. We know what
Right. Right, so we don't get paid to do this. And not to mention that we're here 3 Fridays, and we had to, pull stuff away for the 4th Friday, when we got our thing that we do, but we even haven't done that, but because we need a break.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. There's a body politic that is here now and is doing some work, is renting the space out to help, bring something hopefully to us as a nation. And just want y'all, we need your positive energy. We need your positive, we need your support. And you may not be able to buy us an air conditioner or that, but you can send a note. You know what I mean? You can keep your negativity to yourself so that,
We can't deposit.
Yeah, we can't deposit negative energy. Shoot, you know what I mean? If you don't like the quality of the videos, then turn it the hell off. That's what I said. Yeah. I love y'all, but just turn us off. Just don't put your negativity out there. I think today, Grant, she probably heard the worst of me you ever heard, didn't you?
No.
Oh, you heard me?
No, I think it was bad.
But you never heard me? Okay, but you never heard me?
No, I was kind of disappointed that you were hurt, and it made me cognizant of it because I'm busy all the time, and then upon thinking of it, I understood where you were coming from, because usually you take the pain and don't talk. You keep it moving, but I also know, that it's a lesson to be learned, and I also know that there's thousands of people across the country and outside the land that's really supporting. And I think a lot of times because we don't ask people for anything, they don't recognize that a lot of sacrifices made within. You know what I mean? And there's an assumption that we're bigger than we are.
I wish I could turn the camera around and see all these people here.
Yeah, and not recognizing that, this building has to be run. And it's what it is, but the deal is, we try to do as much as we can and take the burden on our own backs. And people don't know that.
Right.
Right. But it is what it is. And it's sort of like, when she was talking to me earlier today, I could feel her pain, kind of was a damper for me a little bit, but I also know the energy of the time. It's also the energy of the time. And also a test of strength, because even in the point of sacrifice, we keep it moving because it's really for the people. But the people, themselves also have to recognize that much of this work is being done for them, and it's really nations' work being done without compensation, and they don't know that.
Right.
But we don't ask either.
Right.
If you get the point.
Understood.
But nevertheless, it doesn't change the fact that this building still has to be run, and they don't know the fiat energy that's put into just keeping this thing together so that this can go on. And 90% of the time, it's in a hole. If you get the point, but she eats it. I come down here often and eats it. I leave, and most times when I come down here, it doesn't bother me because I've always done this from my perspective for the nation. But I lose every time I come down here. If I want to look at it from an economic perspective, but I don't look at it that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? But people don't know that. And it's not necessarily for them to know that.
Right, clear.
If you understand what I'm saying. But when I see, so people don't know the finance that you took out of her pocket to try to make this event, and it's really for, you know, the building fund and also for progressively making things better so that the broadcast and everything else can be better. And I think because people view us from not just on this land, but in other jurisdictions outside this land, there's an assumption, again, that we're bigger than we are, because, you know, how you say, sometimes pictures or videos appear bigger than life and it's not what it is, you know, but that type of thing. But I can see, the concern, particularly because the goodwill and the good intent for progressive action for the people, and for the people's sake, a lot of times they think it's for you and it's really for them. You know, but and then when you go in a hole to set these things up, and they don't know you're going into a hole.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I saw from our conversation today. And because she's always doing things, and I'm busy too. You know, a lot of times you get so busy, you get in the blues, and you know how you say you become pain tolerant.
Take a licking and keep on ticking.
But anyway,
But
I
you.
never, for myself, I don't complain, and she doesn't complain, you know. So I knew that when she complained, that was pain.
It was pain, right? Absolutely.
You know, because she's very, 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 very resilient being. Those of you know how resilient she is, and know how much that she sacrificed even to maintain the house and turning down, you know, the ego opportunities that used to be where people would throw finance from an emotional point of view. But she's, you know, how do you say, the truth doesn't generate finance the way the game does.
Right.
You know, you know, who play the game.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
You know, it's almost like to stabilize fiat-wise, you almost got to be compromised. And when you refuse to compromise, they attack you in different angles. But anyway, I don't want to complain. But I already know we can overcome it.
We will, and, we will, and I appreciate you all, appreciate the street and Reputed everyone that, you know, is regularly here to help us out. And like I said, this is not a bitch and moan session, but it's just a truth session, you know.
It's a witch and moan.
Yeah, I put something on my page while class was going on, and I said you can't even give the truth to some people, but these same people are quick to buy a lie.
No.
So, you know, we're trying to give the truth away, and we're not really, you know, we know if you don't have it, you don't have it, but those of you who can, you know, let's keep it, and you want to see this going, then we appreciate you. So, appreciate
We
you.
appreciate you, Sister Nadia.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, you know, for an old girl, you know, I'm going to be 65, so I figure that gives me some poetic license, the justification to be snickety or whatever the word is. You know how you get old and crotchety. But thank you so much. I'm going to have to walk to the camera to turn it off if it's not already off, but thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Cool.
So those of you who can come tomorrow, please come. It's going to be good. It might just be the same y'all, but come on, please. Somebody bring somebody. You got a loved one or friend. I'm serious. You know Daddy Brian. Yeah, so you know he's good. You know, and so.
I actually gotta go to New York.
Okay, you are. You get past.
It's not.
But tell somebody that they should come. He's
You were actually.
man.
You got any juice over there?
Got water. Oh Lordy, yeah. You know somebody. Put some information.
Okay.
You want pineapple or strawberry?
Take a pineapple.
These are $2.50.
That they're having
country.
Oh, wow.
Ohio, and we got to our net,
Mhm.
$20 in that. Now, which one would you do? $150 for but they knew what they were doing, but it wasn't smooth. We were like, oh, we're gonna set something out and tell people, we got a program, that person told me that 31
Let me
minutes.
get, I need,
And I don't know what that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm
But
ready.
it was kind of.
I've got a tribute to.
You know, I told you that ain't no good here.
I got a tribute. I got a
That ain't no
tribute.
good.
Can you go, can you
You know what I mean?
talk?
Like, why would you not schedule that, you know, maybe or April or first of May? Why would you put that? Because if I got to choose, I would go to that one too. But I just do what I want to see, you know, then, but, you know, I have to cancel Red Pill and
Yes.
You have some change, like $8.50?
I might have to personally,
Anybody got change for 10?
Now,
Fives
Dr.
or ones?
Tam,
I did.
because really, the circle of mothers discuss these things truthfully. So to the degree that we know fundamental jurisprudence, we will talk, but the real deal of it is culturally, and getting
I
back
got
and
2 5s and
being
then you want
real
to
with
keep
you.
one though?
What you're doing now
Just to,
is really how it's gonna be done.
I only have 4 ones.
And things will not be done
I got
on.
2 5s.
It won't, it really won't be.
Down on the body policy.
You know, cause this is
Why
really,
am I being harassed? Why am I being stalked the way that I'm literally being stalked?
all of us are. Just, see, what we need, let's get this very clear. What appears to be single to yourself,
Oh, no, I know it's not.
no, I'm just saying it's plural. And this is the other deal that must be comprehended. As these things fall apart, it's sort of like, you know how we're looking for, they stole this top from your wardrobe. You have a right to it, morally, ethically, and principally. And I'm not saying ignore it at all. While you're battling for this, on another level in the background, the whole estate is getting ready to be dumped in your hand where this is minor. However, that doesn't mean forget it. But understand, all these things will be returned in a way that cannot be expressed in words.
Even though my mother's entire family was migrated to Nevada for the specific reason of stealing their land. Okay? Literally.
That has been the whole operation. See, this is the whole deal. What is and what has been the operations of the Inquisition? Land grabs. The platform is set up for land grabs. Problem, and this is the key. Why has this been successful for them? Because we're looking at it specifically and not that it is the result of other things. Meaning that if it were not for the fiat operations and the hypothecation of a state and our lack collectively of reversion of estate activity, which is why all of these other things of land stealing have been made possible. Don't look at just the moral argument of the land theft. That is the operation. It's only enabled because of the lack of nationalization and estate claim.
I listened to some of the,
Meaning it's a tributary sickness.
I listened to some other lectures that you was talking as I'm doing my accounts. And something dawned on me that you said that I didn't think about, right? You're talking about the then you said that
They don't
it makes sense now that I'm
Southern Ohio, but somebody else.
the bonds